The scream tore through the fifth-floor corridor at 2:47 a.m., raw, animal, unstoppable. 21-year-old Lila Montgomery thrashed against the hospital bed rails, her body arching backward as if electrocuted. "Something's in the pillow!" she shrieked, clawing at her own hair. The night shift scattered like roaches. Admiral Victor Montgomery stood frozen in the doorway, 4 stars on his uniform meaning nothing against his daughter's agony. Every test came back clean. Every specialist used the same word, psychosomatic. But when Nurse Rowan Pierce finally cut open that pillow with trauma shears at 3:15 a.m., what spilled onto the sterile floor made even the security guard step back. And the person who put it there was still in the building. Before we dive into the story, I want to invite you to stay with me until the very end. If this story grips you, please hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel across the world. Rowan Pierce had worked at Oceanside Memorial Hospital for 6 years, and in that time she'd learned one fundamental truth. Nobody notices the quiet ones until something breaks. She moved through the corridors like weather, present, necessary, forgettable. The doctors nodded past her. The administrators misspelled her name on schedules. Her badge photo was 3 years out of date, still showing the shorter hair she'd cut after her divorce. She preferred it that way. The night shift on the 5th floor was a graveyard in more ways than one. Oceanside Memorial sat in Harlow Bay, a coastal city where the old money came to die gracefully and the new money came to pretend they belonged. The hospital's maritime wing, funded entirely by Admiral Victor Montgomery after his wife's death from cancer, was supposed to be the crown jewel of East Coast medical care. Marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor. Equipment so new it still had protective film on the screens. But at 2:47 a.m. on a Thursday in October, all that polished prestige meant nothing. The scream came from room 517. Rowan was restocking the supply cart when it hit. A sound so primal it seemed to vibrate through the walls themselves. She'd heard screams before. Post-surgical pain, dementia patients trapped in memories, families receiving bad news. This was different. This was terror. She moved fast, her sneakers silent on the polished floor. 2 other nurses, Stephanie and Marcus, were already rushing toward the room, but they stopped short at the doorway. Rowan pushed past them. Inside, Lila Montgomery was convulsing. The young woman's back arched off the mattress, her hands clawing at the pillow beneath her head. Her eyes were wide open, pupils dilated, mouth frozen in a rictus of agony. The monitors screamed in harmony, heart rate spiking to 160, blood pressure climbing, oxygen saturation dropping. "Get Dr. Ashford," Marcus shouted, but he didn't move, just stood there, hands raised like he was afraid to touch her. Rowan stepped to the bedside. Lila, look at me." The girl's eyes found hers. Recognition flickered behind the pain. "I need you to sit up," Rowan said, her voice steady. "Can you do that for me?" Lila's trembling hand reached out, and Rowan took it, pulling her forward. The moment Lila's head lifted off the pillow, the screaming stopped. The girl collapsed forward into Rowan's arms, gasping, sobbing, her entire body shaking like she'd been pulled from ice water. "It's okay," Rowan murmured, supporting her weight. "You're okay. Breathe with me." Behind her, she heard Stephanie on the phone. "Yes, 517. She's having another episode. No, I don't know what triggered it. Yes, vitals are stabilizing." Rowan held Lila upright, feeling the rapid hammer of the girl's heart against her own chest. Over Lila's shoulder, she could see the pillow. Standard issue. White cotton case, memory foam interior. Nothing unusual, but Lila's eyes kept darting back to it with pure animal fear. Dr. Richard Ashford arrived 7 minutes later, his hair still wet from a shower, surgical scrubs hastily pulled on. He was the Maritime Wing's lead neurologist, handpicked by Admiral Montgomery himself. Rowan had watched him work for 3 years. Brilliant diagnostician, terrible listener. "What happened?" he asked, not looking at Lila but at the monitors. "Spontaneous pain episode," Stephanie reported, reading from her tablet. "Started at 2:47, resolved when patient sat upright. Heart rate peaked at 162, BP 180 over 110, currently normalizing." Ashford pulled out his pen light. "Lila, I need you to follow this light. Lila did, her breathing still ragged. Rowan slowly eased her back against the raised mattress, keeping her shoulders elevated. As long as her head didn't touch the pillow, she seemed stable. Any headache? Ashford asked. No, Lila whispered. Nausea? Vision changes? No, just when I lie down, it feels like something stabbing into my skull. Like needles, like... Her voice broke. Nobody believes me. Ashford's expression didn't change. We've run every test, Lila. MRI, CT, spinal tap, blood work, everything's clean. There's no physiological explanation for this pain. Then why does it keep happening? Grief can manifest in physical ways. Your mother passed away 8 months ago. Your father's been deployed more than he's been home. The mind protects itself through... It's not in my mind, Lila's voice cracked. It's real, I'm going to prescribe a stronger sedative, Ashford continued, already typing on his tablet. And I want psych to do a full evaluation in the morning. Rowan felt Lila's hand tighten around hers. The girl's eyes were wet, but she'd stopped arguing. That was worse somehow. The moment when someone stops fighting to be believed. Ashford left without another word. Marcus and Stephanie followed, already moving on to the next crisis. The maritime wing was always full. Senators recovering from heart surgery, CEOs getting experimental treatments, the kind of patients who demanded attention and got it. But Lila Montgomery, despite her father's rank and reputation, had become the girl who cried wolf. Rowan stayed. Tell me when it started, she said quietly, pulling up a chair. Lila looked at her with hollow eyes. 3 weeks ago. I was home on fall break from Whitman College. My dad had just gotten back from a 6-month deployment. We were trying to... She swallowed. Trying to figure out how to talk to each other without Mom. He kept buying me things. New laptop, new phone. Like he could fix grief with money. Were you having headaches then? No, that started after I came back here. I've been having trouble sleeping, so my dad pulled strings. Got me admitted for evaluation and rest. Made it sound like a spa. Lila's laugh was bitter. The first few nights were fine. Then I woke up screaming. They ran tests, found nothing. Gave me sleeping pills. I woke up screaming through the medication. Every night? Every time I lie down. Lila's hand drifted toward the pillow, then jerked back. It's like my head knows. The second it touches that thing, it's like my skull is splitting open from the inside. Rowan glanced at the pillow again. Standard issue. She'd placed 1,000 identical ones on 1,000 beds. Has anyone changed your pillow? 3 times. Different cases. Different foam densities. Doesn't matter. Lila's voice dropped to a whisper. They think I'm crazy. I can see it in how they look at me. Even my dad. He won't say it, but I know. He thinks I'm broken like Mom was at the end. Your mom wasn't broken. She screamed too, when the cancer got into her bones. They gave her morphine, but she still screamed. Lila's eyes were distant. My dad would stand in the hallway because he couldn't watch. I stayed. Somebody had to stay. Rowan understood something then about Admiral Montgomery's crusade for his daughter's care. He'd failed his wife. He would move heaven and earth not to fail Lila. But all his power, all his connections, all his money couldn't solve a mystery that didn't fit into a diagnostic box. I believe you, Rowan said. Lila's head snapped up. What? I believe the pain is real. I believe it happens when you lie down, and I'm going to figure out why. For the first time since Rowan had met her, Lila Montgomery smiled. It was small, fragile, but genuine. You should go home, Lila said. Your shift's over soon. I'm staying. You'll get in trouble. Rowan shrugged. I'm part-time. They barely remember I exist. She meant it as a joke, but it was true. Rowan had deliberately kept herself in the margins of Oceanside Memorial. Full-time nurses got administrative duties, committee assignments, the kind of visibility that led to scrutiny. Part-time meant she could slip in, do her work, slip out. No entanglements. No questions about why a registered nurse with her experience was content to stay at the bottom of the hierarchy. The night crept forward. Rowan stayed in the chair beside Lila's bed, watching the monitors, watching the girl's breathing, watching the pillow. At 4:15 a.m., Lila finally dozed off sitting upright, her head lolling against the raised mattress. Rowan stood slowly, stretching the stiffness from her spine. The corridor outside was quiet. The maritime wing at this hour belonged to machines and shadows. She approached the pillow, picked it up. The weight was wrong. It was subtle. Rowan had lifted thousands of these standard-issue pillows. This one was heavier. Not dramatically so, but enough that her hands registered the difference. She squeezed the foam. Uniform density. She ran her fingers along the seams, all intact, professionally stitched. But something was in there. Rowan's pulse quickened. She looked back at Lila, still sleeping, then at the door. The rational thing would be to report this. Get a supervisor. Follow protocol. But protocol had failed Lila for 3 weeks. Protocol had labeled her hysterical, grief-stricken, psychosomatic. She carried the pillow to the small supply closet adjacent to the room, flicked on the light, locked the door behind her. From the supply cart, she retrieved trauma shears, the heavy-duty scissors designed to cut through clothing, leather, even thin metal in emergency situations. She laid the pillow on the metal shelving and positioned the blade against the seam. One cut. The fabric parted. Rowan pulled the opening wider, reaching into the memory foam. Her fingers touched something hard, cold. She gripped it and pulled. A nail. Rusted, 3 inches long, the head flattened and pitted with age. The point was still sharp. She reached in again. Another nail. Then another. Her hand moved faster, urgency building. She pulled out 9 nails total, each one angled upward, each one positioned so that when weight was applied to the pillow, they would press, not pierce, but press with enough force to cause excruciating pain without breaking skin. This was deliberate. This was engineered. Someone had taken a standard hospital pillow, carefully created pockets in the foam, inserted rusted nails at calculated angles, and resealed it so perfectly that it passed visual inspection. They'd wanted Lila to suffer, wanted her to scream, wanted her labeled as crazy. And it had worked for 3 weeks. Rowan's hands were shaking now. She pulled out her phone, against hospital policy, but she didn't care, and photographed each nail, photographed the pillow, photographed the precise angles of insertion. Then she sealed everything in a biohazard bag, the kind used for contaminated instruments. She needed to think. The closet door opened. Rowan spun around, heart hammering. Stephanie stood in the doorway, her expression unreadable. "What are you doing?" "Look at this." Rowan held up the biohazard bag. "Look what was in Lila's pillow." Stephanie glanced at the nails, then back at Rowan. "Where did you get those?" "They were inside the foam. Hidden. Positioned to cause pain when she lay down." "You cut open hospital property." "Stephanie, someone put these in there. Someone deliberately—" "You need to leave." Stephanie's voice was flat. "Now." "Are you listening to me? Lila wasn't crazy. She was being tortured." "What I'm listening to is a part-time nurse who just destroyed evidence while alone in a room with a patient." Stephanie pulled out her phone. "I'm calling security." Rowan's mind raced. This was wrong. This was all wrong. Stephanie should be shocked, horrified, calling for help. Instead, she looked... what? Annoyed? Afraid? "Don't call security," Rowan said carefully. "Call the police. This is assault. What this is you creating a problem where there wasn't one." Stephanie's finger hovered over her phone. Lila Montgomery is the daughter of Admiral Victor Montgomery, the man who funds this entire wing. If word gets out that his daughter was being hurt under our care, this hospital will be destroyed. Careers will be destroyed. My career. "Your career?" Rowan felt something cold settle in her chest. "A girl has been screaming in agony for 3 weeks, and you're worried about your career? You don't understand how this works. You're part-time. You're nobody. You think you can just play hero and everything will be fine?" Stephanie's composure was cracking. "They'll bury this. They'll bury you. And that girl will still be here, still screaming, but now with a lawsuit against the hospital that will gut every department. Unless we find who did this." "We're not doing anything. You're leaving." Stephanie raised her phone. "Security to the maritime wing, 5th floor. Code yellow." Code yellow meant aggressive staff member, meant restraint, meant escorted removal from the premises. Rowan had seconds to decide. She grabbed the biohazard bag and ran. Behind her, Stephanie's voice rose, "Stop! Someone stop her!" But the corridor was empty. Rowan sprinted toward the stairwell, her sneakers squeaking on the marble. Behind her, she heard voices, footsteps, the crackle of radios. She hit the stairwell door hard, letting it slam behind her, then took the stairs 2 at a time, going down. 3rd floor, 2nd floor, 1st floor. She burst into the main lobby. A security guard at the desk looked up, startled. "Emergency," Rowan gasped. "Call Detective Division, Harlow Bay PD. Tell them there's been an assault at Oceanside Memorial. Patient in room 517. Evidence in hand." The guard reached for his radio, but another voice cut through. "Don't." Rowan turned. Security Chief Dale Winters emerged from the administrative hallway, flanked by 2 officers. He was a retired Marine built like a refrigerator, with the kind of face that had forgotten how to smile. "Ms. Pierce," he said calmly, "we need you to hand over that bag and come with us." "Not until police are here. This is a hospital matter. Internal investigation. You've violated protocol, destroyed property, and caused a disturbance. Put the bag down." "There are nails in this pillow, rusted nails, positioned to hurt Lila Montgomery every time she lay down. This isn't protocol. This is attempted murder." Winter's expression didn't change. "And you discovered this how? By cutting open hospital property without authorization? By contaminating potential evidence? By acting outside your scope of practice?" Each question was a nail of its own, pinning Rowan's credibility to the floor. "I was trying to help a patient." "You were trying to be something you're not." Winters stepped closer. "You're a part-time nurse with a history. Did you think we don't do background checks? Divorced? Bankruptcy? Previous employer listed you as not eligible for rehire. You've been looking for significance your whole life, Ms. Pierce. But this isn't it." The words hit like physical blows. Rowan felt the lobby spinning, felt the weight of every decision that had led her here. "Put down the bag," Winters repeated. "Last chance." Rowan's grip tightened on the biohazard bag. Everything in her life had taught her to fold, to make herself smaller, to let the people with power decide what was true. But upstairs, Lila Montgomery was sleeping in a chair because lying down meant agony, and someone in this hospital had deliberately caused that agony, and nobody with power seemed to care. "No," Rowan said. Winter's hand moved to his belt, where a radio and taser sat clipped. The hospital lobby's automatic doors opened with a pneumatic hiss. Admiral Victor Montgomery walked in. He was in full dress uniform, white with gold braid, 4 stars gleaming on his collar, ribbons stacked on his chest representing 30 years of service from the Persian Gulf to the South China Sea. He was 62 years old, gray-haired, with the kind of presence that made rooms fall silent. Behind him came 2 officers in Navy service khakis and 1 woman in a dark suit that screamed federal agent. Montgomery's gaze swept the lobby, taking in the scene instantly. Security guards blocking a nurse, the biohazard bag clutched in her hands, the tension thick enough to choke on. "Chief Winters," Montgomery said, his voice carrying the weight of command. "Step away from my daughter's nurse." Winters hesitated, then moved back. The guards followed his lead. Montgomery approached Rowan. Up close, she could see the exhaustion carved into his face, the sleeplessness, the terrible helplessness of a man who'd commanded aircraft carriers but couldn't command his daughter's suffering to stop. "You're the one who stayed with her," he said. Not a question. "Yes, sir." "Show me what you found." Rowan opened the biohazard bag. Montgomery looked inside, his expression never changing. But something in his eyes went very, very cold. He turned to the woman in the suit. "Agent Reeves." The woman stepped forward, pulling out credentials. "Special Agent Diana Reeves, Naval Criminal Investigative Service. This hospital operates under federal jurisdiction due to its military contracts and funding, which means this is now an NCIS investigation." She looked at Winters. "Lock down this building. Nobody enters or leaves without clearance." "You can't just," Winters began. "I can, and I am. Admiral Montgomery has reason to believe his daughter was targeted while under military-adjacent care. That makes this a matter of national security." Reeves pulled out her phone. "I'm calling in a forensic team." Montgomery's attention returned to Rowan. "Where's my daughter now?" "Room 517. She's sleeping, but she can't lie down. The pain. I know. His voice cracked slightly. I've heard her scream every night for 3 weeks. I've watched every test come back negative. I've listened to doctors tell me she's grieving. He paused. And you're the first person who thought to check the goddamn pillow. Sir, what's your name? Rowan Pierce. How long have you worked here? 6 years. In what capacity? Part-time night shift. 5th floor. Montgomery studied her for a long moment. Part-time. Night shift. 6 years. And nobody noticed you were the only one actually paying attention. It wasn't a question, but Rowan answered anyway. People see what they expect to see. Yes, Montgomery said quietly. They do. Agent Reeves was already coordinating with her phone pressed to her ear, giving rapid instructions about evidence collection, chain of custody, security protocols. The lobby was transforming from a hospital entrance into a crime scene. Staff members began appearing from various corridors, confused, frightened. Dr. Ashford pushed through the gathering crowd. Admiral, what's happening? I was told there's a lockdown. Someone put nails in my daughter's pillow, Montgomery said flatly. Designed to cause pain. For 3 weeks she's been tortured in your care, and every one of you missed it. Ashford's face went white. That's impossible. Our supply chain is... Evidently not. Montgomery's tone could have frozen water. Agent Reeves will be interviewing every staff member who had access to my daughter's room. Every orderly, every housekeeper, every doctor. He paused. Every administrator who signed off on calling her crazy. The implications crashed through the lobby like a wave. Careers ending, lawsuits, criminal charges. The weight of institutional failure. Stephanie appeared at the edge of the crowd, her face pale. Her eyes met Rowan's for just a moment before she looked away. I want to see my daughter, Montgomery said. This way, Rowan replied, leading him toward the elevators. They rode up in silence, the Admiral's 2 officers flanking them. When the doors opened on the 5th floor, they found Lila still sleeping in the chair, her head at an awkward angle, her body exhausted beyond care for comfort. Montgomery stopped in the doorway. She looks like her mother, he said softly, especially when she's sleeping. He approached slowly, carefully, like she might shatter, knelt beside the chair, reached out and gently adjusted her position so her neck wouldn't hurt. Lila's eyes fluttered open. Dad? I'm here. You're supposed to be in Washington. The committee hearing is less important than you. He took her hand. I should have said that 3 weeks ago. I should have believed you from the first scream. Everyone thinks You're not. His voice was firm. They found it. In your pillow. Someone put nails in there. Someone hurt you deliberately. Lila stared at him, processing. I'm not crazy? You were never crazy. You were telling the truth, and we failed you. Tears spilled down Lila's face. Not from pain this time, but from relief so profound it looked like grief. Montgomery pulled her into his arms, this admiral who'd commanded thousands, now holding his daughter while she shook with sobs. Rowan stepped back, giving them privacy. In the hallway, Agent Reeves was already setting up a command post. Officers and NCIS windbreakers were cordoning off sections of the floor. The machinery of investigation was rolling forward. Ms. Pierce, Rowan turned. Reeves was standing there with a tablet. I need your statement. Everything you observed, every detail, from the moment you first encountered Lila Montgomery. They went to an empty conference room. Rowan talked for 40 minutes straight, Reeves recording every word, occasionally stopping her to clarify timelines or interactions. When she finished, Reeves sat back. You have a good eye for detail. I'm a nurse. Details keep people alive. Why part-time? With your skills, you could be running a department. The question landed exactly where Reeves intended. Rowan felt the familiar instinct to deflect, to minimize, to disappear. But she was so tired of disappearing. I had a full-time position once, at Mercy General, across the city. I reported a doctor for falsifying patient records to cover mistakes. The hospital investigated, found evidence, fired the doctor. Rowan's voice was steady. Then they made my life hell until I quit, denied me shifts, gave me impossible assignments, spread rumors. My marriage was already failing. The stress finished it. I filed for bankruptcy after the divorce, Nobody would hire me full-time after that. So I went part-time, kept my head down, and tried to just survive. That doctor you reported, Reeves said. Dr. Marcus Chen? Rowan's head snapped up. How do you… Dr. Chen now works here, at Oceanside Memorial, in the Maritime Wing. Reeves leaned forward. As of 6 months ago, he's been on the Supply Chain Oversight Committee, which means he has access to every pillow, every sheet, every piece of equipment that comes into this hospital. The room tilted. You think he did this? Because I think we have a person with motive, means, and opportunity. I think you cost him a prestigious position, and he's the kind of man who holds grudges. Reeves stood. Stay available. Don't leave the city. This investigation is going to move fast. She left Rowan sitting in the conference room, her mind reeling. The next 8 hours passed in a blur. NCIS forensic specialists descended on room 517, photographing everything, bagging evidence, dusting for prints. The pillow was taken apart fiber by fiber. The supply chain was traced backward, from the room to the linen storage to the central warehouse to the delivery company. By 2 p.m., they had a name. Wade Hartley. Contract worker for Harborside Logistics, the company that supplied Oceanside Memorial with all its non-medical textiles. Wade had a record: assault, battery, dishonorable discharge from the Army, and he'd personally delivered 4 shipments to the Maritime Wing in the last month. By 4 p.m., Wade was in an interrogation room. Rowan wasn't there for it, but Reeves shared the relevant parts later. Wade had cracked in under an hour. He'd been paid $5,000 cash to swap out a standard pillow with one he'd been given. He didn't know what was in it, didn't ask questions. The money had paid off debts. Who paid you? Reeves had demanded. Wade gave them a name, not Dr. Chen. Someone else entirely. Captain Douglas Harmon, retired Navy, decorated veteran, now a contractor specializing in military hospital logistics, and a man who'd served under Admiral Montgomery 20 years ago, until Montgomery had him court-martialed for embezzlement. Harmon had spent 3 years in military prison, lost his pension, lost everything. When he got out, he'd rebuilt slowly, carefully, always staying just inside legal boundaries. But he'd never forgiven Montgomery. And when he learned the Admiral's daughter was being treated at a hospital he supplied, the temptation for revenge had been too perfect to resist. Torture her slowly. Make her seem crazy. Destroy Montgomery's trust in medicine, just like Montgomery had destroyed Harmon's life. By 6 p.m., NCIS had Harmon in custody. By 8 p.m., Admiral Montgomery was standing in the Maritime Wing's main conference room, facing every administrator, every department head, every person responsible for dismissing his daughter's pain. Rowan was there too, standing in the back. Montgomery had insisted. 3 weeks, the Admiral said, his voice quiet but caring. My daughter screamed for 3 weeks. She begged for help. She told you something was wrong, and every single one of you decided she was crazy before you decided to investigate. Dr. Ashford started to speak. Sir, the tests were clean. I know. But did anyone check her room? Her bed? Her pillow? Did anyone think for 5 seconds that maybe, just maybe, a patient reporting consistent pain triggered by a specific action might be telling the truth? Montgomery's gaze swept the room. No, because she was young, because she was grieving, because dismissing her was easier than listening. The silence was crushing. One person listened, Montgomery continued. A part-time nurse who none of you seem to have even noticed exists. She didn't have rank, didn't have authority. She had a job to do and she did it, while the rest of you protected your careers. He turned to the hospital's CEO, Walter Grantham, a silver-haired man who'd been sweating since the meeting started. Effective immediately, I'm pulling all Montgomery Foundation funding from this hospital, $60 million annually. Gone. NCIS will be conducting a full investigation into your supply chain, your oversight protocols, and your handling of patient complaints. And if they find evidence of negligence or cover-up, I will personally ensure every legal avenue is pursued. Grantham's face went gray. Admiral, please, if we could discuss… We're done discussing. Montgomery walked to the door, then paused. Ms. Pierce, with me. Rowan followed him into the corridor. Her hands were shaking. I'm leaving Harlow Bay tonight, Montgomery said. taking Lila to Walter Reed Medical Center in D.C. Real doctors. Real oversight. He pulled an envelope from his jacket. This is a letter of recommendation. Use it however you want. But you're too good to stay invisible. Sir, I don't. You saved my daughter's life. Maybe not in the dramatic sense, but in the way that matters. You gave her back her sanity, her dignity. You believed her when nobody else would. He handed her the envelope. That deserves to be seen. Before Rowan could respond, Lila appeared at the end of the corridor, dressed in street clothes, an overnight bag over her shoulder. She looked fragile but steady, like someone stepping into sunlight after years underground. She walked straight to Rowan and hugged her. "Thank you," Lila whispered. "Thank you for being the kind of person who doesn't look away." Then she and her father were gone, surrounded by NCIS escorts, disappearing into the elevators. Rowan stood alone in the corridor holding the envelope, feeling the weight of everything that had just happened settle onto her shoulders. Behind her, someone cleared their throat. She turned. Security Chief Winters stood there, his expression unreadable. "You know what you did, don't you?" he said. "Found the truth. Destroyed this hospital's reputation, ended careers, created a shitstorm that's going to last years." He stepped closer. "You could have just reported it quietly. Let us handle it internally, but you had to be the hero." Rowan met his gaze. "A girl was screaming. I listened. That's not heroism. That's basic humanity. Basic humanity doesn't pay the bills. It doesn't keep hospitals running. It doesn't protect jobs." Winters's voice dropped. "You just burned down the only place that would hire you. Where are you going to work now?" It was meant to scare her, to remind her of her place, her precariousness, her dependence on institutions that could crush her without effort. But Rowan felt something strange. Not fear, not defiance, just clarity. "I don't know," she said honestly, "but I know I won't stay somewhere that values reputation over truth." She walked past him, down the corridor, toward the elevators. Her shift was over. Her badge access would probably be revoked by morning. Her career at Oceanside Memorial was finished. But when she stepped outside into the October evening, feeling the salt air blow in from Harlow Bay, she realized something. For the first time in 6 years, she wasn't invisible. And she wasn't going to disappear again. The notification came at 6:47 a.m., 3 days after Admiral Montgomery pulled his funding. Rowan was in her apartment, a studio on the 5th floor of a converted warehouse building that smelled like old paint and ambition, when her phone buzzed. An email from Oceanside Memorial's Human Resources Department. Subject line, "Immediate action required." She opened it already knowing what it would say. "Dear Ms. Pierce, following recent events and subsequent investigation, your employment with Oceanside Memorial Hospital has been terminated effective immediately. Your final paycheck will be processed within 7 business days. Please return all hospital property, including your badge and any uniforms, to the HR office by 5 p.m. today. Access to hospital premises has been revoked. This decision is final and not subject to appeal." No mention of what she'd discovered. No acknowledgement of Lila Montgomery. Just the cold machinery of institutional self-preservation grinding her into administrative dust. Rowan set the phone down and looked around her apartment. One room. Kitchenette along the east wall. Bathroom barely big enough to turn around in. Windows overlooking Harlow Bay's industrial waterfront, where cargo ships moved like slow thoughts against the gray morning water. She'd moved here after the divorce, after Mercy General, after learning that standing up for the truth came with a price tag she couldn't afford. The rent was $800 a month, cheap for Harlow Bay, but still more than half her income. She had $1,600 in her checking account, no savings, no family to fall back on. Her ex-husband had remarried and moved to Portland. Her parents were dead. The letter from Admiral Montgomery sat on her desk, still in its envelope. She pulled it out, unfolded it, read it again. "To whom it may concern, Miss Rowan Pierce demonstrated exceptional clinical judgment, moral courage, and dedication to patient welfare under circumstances that would have broken lesser professionals. She identified a complex assault scenario that eluded multiple specialists and administrators, and she pursued the truth despite significant institutional pressure to remain silent. Any organization would be fortunate to have her. I recommend her without reservation for any position requiring integrity, intelligence, and the courage to act when others look away. Admiral Victor Montgomery, USN." Beautiful words. Useless currency. Rowan had sent out 43 applications in the last 3 days. Hospitals, clinics, urgent care centers, private practices. Most hadn't responded. 5 had sent automatic rejections. 2 had called to schedule interviews, then canceled when they ran her references, and someone at Oceanside Memorial whispered the truth. She's a troublemaker. Her phone rang. Unknown number. Hello. Ms. Pierce, this is Janet Kowalski from Harbor Point Medical Group. We received your application for the clinic nursing position. Rowan's heart jumped. Harbor Point was small but reputable, a community health center serving Harlow Bay's immigrant and working-class neighborhoods. Good work. Honest work. Thank you for calling, Rowan said, keeping her voice steady. I wanted to reach out personally because your resume is impressive. 6 years at Oceanside Memorial, excellent clinical skills, strong references from... Kowalski paused. Well, most of your references are strong. Most? I spoke with Stephanie Chen this morning. She's listed as your supervisor? Rowan closed her eyes. Stephanie. Of course. Ms. Chen expressed concerns about your judgment and your tendency to act outside established protocols. She mentioned an incident involving destruction of hospital property and a confrontation with security. Another pause. She said you were terminated for insubordination. That's not what happened. She was very specific, very detailed, and she's a department head at one of the region's top hospitals. Kowalski's tone shifted, becoming careful, distant. I'm sure you understand our position. We need team players, people who work within the system. The system was hurting a patient. Ms. Pierce, I appreciate your passion, but I found nails in a patient's pillow. Rusted nails, deliberately placed to cause pain. The patient had been screaming for 3 weeks and everyone told her she was crazy. I proved she wasn't. That's why I was fired. Silence on the other end. Then, that's quite a story. The way she said it, like Rowan was a child telling tales about monsters under the bed. It's documented, Rowan said. NCIS has the evidence. Admiral Montgomery himself wrote my recommendation letter. I'm sure it was very stressful, but we've decided to move forward with other candidates. I wish you the best of luck. The line went dead. Rowan sat there, phone still pressed to her ear, listening to nothing. The best of luck. She'd saved a girl's life and destroyed her own, and the world was telling her she should have stayed quiet. Her phone buzzed again. Text message from an unknown number. Stop applying places. Nobody's going to hire you. You made your choice. Live with it. No signature, no identification, just malice, casual and confident. Rowan deleted it. Then another came. You think you're a hero? You're just unemployed. She turned off her phone. The silence in her apartment was enormous. For 3 days, Rowan existed in a strange limbo. She went to the gym in her building because it was free and gave her somewhere to be. She walked along the waterfront because walking was free too. She ate ramen and canned soup because her money was draining like water through cupped hands. On the 4th day, she went to the unemployment office. The building was Soviet-era brutal, concrete and fluorescent lights, and the smell of desperation. She took a number and waited for 2 hours in plastic chairs that had been engineered to prevent comfort. Around her, people filled out forms in languages she didn't speak, argued with caseworkers in voices raw with panic, stared at their phones with the hollow eyes of people refreshing job listings that never changed. Number 347. Rowan approached the window. The caseworker was a woman in her 50s with gray hair pulled back so tight it looked painful. Name? Rowan Pierce. Reason for unemployment? Terminated. Cause of termination? Rowan hesitated. The truth was complicated. The lie was easy, but she was so tired of easy lies. I reported a crime at my workplace. They fired me for it. The caseworker looked up from her screen. You were fired for whistleblowing? Essentially. Do you have documentation? Rowan pulled out printouts. The termination email, Admiral Montgomery's letter, news articles about the NCIS investigation at Oceanside Memorial. The caseworker read through them slowly, her expression shifting from boredom to interest to something that might have been respect. This is a wrongful termination case, she said finally. I can't afford a lawyer. Legal aid might take it, Especially with this. She tapped Montgomery's letter. But it'll take months, maybe years, and hospitals talk to each other. Even if you win, you might be blacklisted. I'm already blacklisted. The caseworker nodded slowly. Yeah, you probably are. She typed something into her computer. I'm approving you for benefits. It's not much, but it'll keep you afloat while you figure this out. And I'm flagging your case for the Labor Department. What happened to you? It's illegal. Doesn't mean you'll get justice, but it's illegal. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Unemployment pays $400 a week. Can you live on that? Rowan did the math. $1,600 a month. Rent was $800. Utilities maybe $150. Food, insurance, phone, transportation. She'd be negative every month. Slowly bleeding out. I'll manage, she said. The caseworker gave her a look that said she'd heard that before, usually from people who ended up homeless. Good luck, she said, and called the next number. Rowan walked out into October sunshine that felt like mockery. She had $400 a week and a future that looked like a cliff edge. Her phone buzzed. She'd turned it back on that morning, a small act of defiance against whoever was sending threatening texts. But this wasn't a threat. It was an email from an address she didn't recognize. Email protected. Subject: job opportunity. Confidential. She almost deleted it. Scam, obviously. But something made her open it. Ms. Pierce, I represent a private medical organization seeking an experienced nurse for a short-term, high-stakes assignment. The work is legitimate, well-compensated, and requires exactly the kind of judgment you demonstrated at Oceanside Memorial. If you're interested, meet me at the Harborview Diner on Coastal Boulevard tomorrow at 2 p.m. Sit in the last booth. Come alone. This is not a joke. Dr. Sarah Vance. Rowan read it 3 times. It had all the hallmarks of a scam or something worse. Anonymous email, vague details, secret meeting, but it also had one thing that made her pause. The name. Dr. Sarah Vance. She pulled out her laptop, opened a browser, searched. Dr. Sarah Vance appeared in exactly 3 places. A 10-year-old medical journal article about battlefield trauma care, a LinkedIn profile with no photo and minimal information listing her as independent medical consultant, and a single mention in a Navy Times article about experimental field medicine programs. Military. Private. Careful. Rowan looked at her bank account again, looked at her apartment, looked at the stack of rejection emails. What did she have to lose? The Harborview Diner was the kind of place that had survived 3 recessions by serving breakfast all day and never updating its decor. Red vinyl booths, checkered floor. Waitresses who called everyone hon and refilled coffee without asking. Rowan arrived at 1:45 p.m. and took the last booth as instructed, ordered coffee, waited. At exactly 2 p.m., a woman slid into the seat across from her. Dr. Sarah Vance was maybe 50, with short dark hair going silver at the temples, and the kind of face that had seen things she didn't talk about. She wore jeans, a black jacket, no jewelry. Her hands were steady as she picked up the menu the waitress handed her. Coffee black, she told the waitress. Then to Rowan, You came alone? Yes. Not wearing a wire? Why would I be wearing a wire? Because some people think I'm dangerous. Vance smiled slightly. They're not entirely wrong. The waitress brought coffee. Vance wrapped her hands around the cup, studying Rowan with the kind of assessment that felt clinical. You found nails in a pillow, Vance said. Saved a girl from being tortured. Got fired for it. Now you're blacklisted and broke. You've done your research. I always do. You're also divorced, bankrupt, and apparently incapable of keeping your head down. Vance took a sip of coffee. Those last 2 traits make you perfect for what I need. Which is? I run a network of medical professionals who work outside traditional systems. Military veterans, mostly. People who've seen what happens when bureaucracy kills patients. We take assignments that hospitals won't touch. Refugee camps, disaster zones, places where the rules are different because the stakes are higher. You're a mercenary. I'm a doctor. My team is nurses, medics, surgeons, all credentialed, all experienced. We just choose where we work. Vance set down her cup. Right now, I need a nurse for a 2-week assignment. Humanitarian medical ship operating off the coast of Central America. We're treating patients from coastal villages that have no access to health care. The pay is $5,000, cash plus room and board. $5,000. 2 months of unemployment in 2 weeks. What's the catch? Rowan asked. The ship operates in international waters, which means we're outside most regulatory oversight. It's legal, but it's not exactly traditional. The patients are often undocumented. The conditions are basic. And if something goes wrong, you're a long way from help. Why me? Because you stood up to an admiral's personal hospital and won. Because you have the clinical skills I need and the moral backbone to work in gray areas without losing your compass. Vance leaned forward. And because you're desperate enough to say yes. It should have felt like manipulation. Instead, it felt like honesty. When would I leave? Rowan asked. Tomorrow night, flight to Costa Rica, then boat to the ship. 2 weeks at sea, then home. I need to think about it. You have until 8 p.m. tonight. After that, I offer the job to someone else. Vance stood, pulled a business card from her pocket, set it on the table. Just a phone number, nothing else. Call if you're in, don't call if you're not. Either way, this conversation never happened. She left $40 on the table for 2 coffees and walked out. Rowan sat there, turning the card over in her hands. Everything about this screamed risk. Unregulated medicine. Cash payment. Secret organization. It was exactly the kind of situation her training had warned her against. But her training had also taught her to trust institutions, to follow protocols, to believe that the system protected people. And she'd learned the hard way that sometimes the system just protected itself. At 7:53 p.m., Rowan called the number. Vance answered on the first ring. You're in? I'm in. Pack light. Medical gear will be provided. Passport, basic clothes, nothing you can't carry in one bag. A car will pick you up at 6 a.m. tomorrow. Where are we meeting? You'll find out when you get there. Welcome to the team, Pierce. The line went dead. Rowan stood in her apartment, heart hammering, wondering what she'd just agreed to. The car arrived at 5:58 a.m., a black SUV with tinted windows and a driver who didn't speak. Rowan climbed in with her duffel bag and her doubts. They drove for 40 minutes, leaving Harlow Bay behind, heading south along the coast into industrial areas she'd never seen. Finally, they pulled up to a private airfield where a small jet sat waiting on the tarmac. Dr. Vance stood at the base of the stairs. On time, she said approvingly. Good sign. 3 other people were already on the plane, 2 men and a woman, all around Vance's age, all with the same watchful competence. They introduced themselves with first names only. Marcus, former Army medic. Elena, surgical nurse with Doctors Without Borders experience. James, emergency medicine physician who'd worked refugee camps in Jordan. Nobody asked about Rowan's background. Nobody offered details about their own. They were professionals brought together for a job, and the job was all that mattered. The flight took 6 hours. They landed at a small airport outside San Jose, Costa Rica, where another car was waiting. Then an hour's drive to the coast, to a marina where a motor launch sat ready. The sun was setting as they boarded, the sky going orange and purple over the Pacific. The launch cut through calm water, heading west, the coastline shrinking behind them. After an hour, lights appeared on the horizon. The ship was smaller than Rowan had expected, maybe 200 feet long, painted white, with a red cross on the hull that had faded to pink. It looked like a ferry that had been converted to medical use, with examination rooms visible through windows and a deck that had been transformed into a waiting area. Welcome to the Mercy Grace, Vance said as they approached. She's old, she's slow, but she's saved more lives than any hospital I've worked in. They climbed aboard. The crew was small, maybe 15 people total, including medical staff, boat crew, and support personnel. Everyone moved with purpose, no wasted motion, no unnecessary chatter. Vance led Rowan to a cabin the size of a closet. Bunk bed, small sink, storage locker. You'll be working 12-hour shifts, Vance said. We see between 50 and 80 patients a day, mostly basic care, infections, malnutrition, chronic disease management, but we also get trauma, obstetric emergencies, things that need immediate intervention. She paused. The patients come by boat from villages up and down the coast. They're poor. Many are indigenous. Some are refugees from violence. They trust us because we don't ask questions and we don't charge money. How is this funded? Rowan asked. Private donors, people who believe healthcare is a right, not a privilege. Vance's expression was unreadable. Get some sleep. Your shift starts at 6 a.m. Rowan lay in the narrow bunk, feeling the gentle rock of the ship, listening to unfamiliar sounds, waves, engines, distant voices speaking Spanish. She thought about Oceanside Memorial, about Lila Montgomery, about the path that had led her here. She'd wanted to be invisible. Instead, she'd become impossible to ignore. And now she was in international waters with strangers, about to practice medicine in a gray area between legal and necessary. She should have been terrified. Instead, for the first time in years, she felt like she might be exactly where she was supposed to be. The first patient arrived at 6:07 a.m. A woman, maybe 30, holding a child with a fever that had turned his eyes glassy. She spoke rapid Spanish. Rowan's Spanish was minimal, high school classes from 15 years ago, but Elena translated smoothly. The boy's been sick for 5 days. High fever, vomiting, diarrhea. She's tried everything, but he's getting worse. Rowan examined the child. Severe dehydration, possible bacterial infection. He needed IV fluids, antibiotics, monitoring. At Oceanside Memorial, this would have meant admission, insurance verification, mountains of paperwork. Here, it meant action. Rowan started an IV, Elena administered medication, and within an hour the boy's eyes were clearer, his breathing easier. His mother wept with gratitude, pressing Rowan's hands between her own, repeating, "Gracias, gracias," like a prayer. The patients kept coming. An elderly man with diabetes who hadn't been able to afford insulin in months. A teenage girl with an infection from a botched piercing. A fisherman with a deep laceration from a knife that had slipped while cleaning catch. A pregnant woman in her 3rd trimester showing signs of preeclampsia. Rowan worked without stopping, her hands moving through familiar motions, assess, diagnose, treat, document. But the rhythm was different here. No insurance denials, no administrators questioning her judgment, no protocols designed to protect the hospital instead of the patient. Just medicine, stripped down to its essential purpose, reduce suffering. By the end of her first 12-hour shift, she'd seen 43 patients. Her feet ached, her back screamed, her scrubs were stained with blood and betadine and sweat. She felt alive. "You did good work today," Vance said over dinner. Rice, beans, grilled fish that the boat crew had caught that morning. "You keep up that pace, we'll get through the backlog before the end of your rotation." "How many people are waiting?" Rowan asked. "Hundreds. Maybe thousands. We try to schedule them, but word spreads. People come from farther away than we expect." Vance poured herself water from a pitcher. "Tomorrow we're expecting a complex case. 8-year-old girl with a heart condition, congenital defect, needs surgery, but the nearest hospital that could do it is 3 countries away, and her family has no money." "What are we going to do?" "Best we can. Stabilize her, maybe arrange transport if we can find a facility willing to take a charity case." Vance met Rowan's eyes. "Sometimes we can't save them. Sometimes all we can do is make them comfortable." "That's not enough." "No, but it's what we have." The words settled over the table like weight. That night, Rowan stood on deck under stars so bright they looked like holes punched in black paper. The ocean stretched in every direction, dark and endless. Behind her, she could hear the soft sounds of the ship, engines humming, crew talking in low voices, the creak of metal on water. Her phone had no signal out here. No emails, no threatening texts, no job rejections. She was cut off from everything that had defined her life for 6 years. It should have felt like exile. Instead, it felt like freedom. "Can't sleep?" She turned. Marcus, the former Army medic, had come up beside her carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Still adjusting," Rowan said, accepting one. "It takes a few days." The motion. The isolation. He leaned against the rail. "Vance told us what happened to you. The girl with the nails. She talks about new recruits? Only when they're worth talking about." Marcus sipped his coffee. "You did the right thing, you know, even though it cost you." "Doesn't feel right. Feels like I lost everything." "You lost a job that didn't deserve you. You lost colleagues who cared more about covering their asses than helping people. You lost access to a system that had already failed." He gestured at the ship around them. But you found this, and tomorrow you'll save that little girl's life, or you'll hold her hand while she's scared, or you'll give her family one more day with her. That's not nothing. It's not a career. No, but it's purpose, and sometimes purpose matters more than security. He left her there with the coffee and the stars. Rowan finished the cup slowly, tasting salt air and possibility. The girl arrived at 9 a.m. the next morning. Her name was Isabella, 8 years old, with dark curly hair and eyes too large for her thin face. Her mother carried her aboard because Isabella could barely walk 20 feet without becoming breathless. Dr. James examined her while Rowan monitored vitals. The diagnosis was clear: ventricular septal defect, a hole in the wall between the heart's chambers. Blood was flowing the wrong direction, making her heart work too hard, slowly killing her. She needs open heart surgery, James said quietly to Vance. Patch the hole, maybe a valve replacement. It's complex, but doable. Can we do it here? With what equipment? This isn't a cardiac surgery suite. Then we stabilize and find her a hospital. James pulled out his phone. They had satellite internet, limited but functional. He spent 2 hours making calls, sending emails, begging hospitals in 3 countries to take a charity case. Every single one said no. Rowan watched Isabella sitting with her mother, clutching a worn stuffed rabbit, her breathing labored even at rest. The girl smiled at her, a tiny, brave smile that broke something inside Rowan's chest. There has to be someone, Rowan said. There isn't, James replied flatly. The hospitals that could do this surgery charge $50,000 to $100,000. Her family makes maybe $3,000 a year. The math doesn't work. So we just let her die. We make her comfortable. We give her medication to help her breathe. No. Rowan pulled out her own phone, opened her email, found the message she'd saved. Admiral Montgomery's personal email from when he'd sent her the recommendation letter. She typed fast. Admiral Montgomery, I know this is unconventional, but I'm asking for help. There's an 8-year-old girl who needs heart surgery. No family resources, no hospital will take her as charity. I'm working on a medical ship off Central America. If you know anyone, any facility, anything, please. She deserves a chance. Rowan Pierce. She hit send before she could second-guess herself. What did you do? Vance asked. Called in the only favor I have. You think a Navy admiral is going to help a random girl in Costa Rica? I think he remembers what it's like when someone fights for his daughter. They waited. Isabella's condition worsened through the afternoon. Her lips were tinged blue. Her oxygen saturation was dropping. James put her on supplemental oxygen, but it was a temporary fix for a permanent problem. Rowan sat with Isabella and her mother, holding the girl's small hand, feeling the flutter of pulse that was working too hard. Tell her she's brave, Rowan said to Elena, who translated softly. Isabella smiled again, said something in Spanish. She says you're the brave one, Elena translated, for helping people like her. Rowan's phone buzzed. Email from Admiral Montgomery. Miss Pierce, I made some calls. Walter Reed Medical Center in D.C. will take her. Full cardiac surgery, complete recovery care, all costs covered by the Montgomery Foundation. Get her to San Jose International Airport by tomorrow evening. I'm sending a medevac plane. She'll have the best surgeons in the country. You did good asking. V. Montgomery. Rowan read it 3 times to make sure it was real. Then she handed the phone to James. We're taking her to San Jose, she said. Tomorrow. James read the email. His expression went from skeptical to stunned. How did you? I saved his daughter. Now he's saving mine. The ship turned toward shore. They reached the marina by midnight, transferred Isabella and her mother to a waiting ambulance, drove through darkness to San Jose. At the airport, a military medical plane sat on the tarmac, gray, sleek, with the Navy Medical Corps insignia on the tail. 2 flight nurses came down the stairs, wheeling a stretcher with monitoring equipment. Isabella Rodriguez, one of them asked. This is her, Rowan said. They lifted the girl carefully, securing her, checking vitals, moving with the efficiency of professionals who did this every day. Isabella's mother clutched Rowan's hand, speaking words Rowan couldn't understand but felt completely. Elena translated. She's asking if she'll see you again. Tell her, Rowan's voice caught. Tell her I'll be thinking of her. Every day. The mother embraced her, fierce and grateful. then climbed the plane stairs after her daughter. The engine started. The plane taxied, lifted, disappeared into the night sky. Rowan stood on the tarmac, watching it go, feeling something shift inside her. She'd spent 6 years being invisible, being quiet, being careful not to make waves. But waves were how you moved water. Waves were how you changed tides. Back on the Mercy Grace, Vance was waiting. "That was impressive," she said, "and expensive. Montgomery just spent probably $300,000 on a girl he's never met." "He spent it on the principle," Rowan said, "that everyone deserves someone who'll fight for them." "You believe that?" "I have to. Otherwise, what's the point of any of this?" Vance studied her for a long moment. "Your 2 weeks are almost up. The boat back to shore leaves tomorrow, but I'm offering you a permanent position. We need someone with your skills and your stubborn refusal to accept that some people don't matter." She paused. "The pay's better than unemployment. The work is harder than anything you've done, and you'll never be able to put it on a resume that hospitals will respect." "What's the catch?" "The catch is you give up normal. No 401k, no career ladder, no stability. Just this ship and people who need help and the absolute certainty that the system doesn't care." Vance's expression was serious. "You saved Lila Montgomery because you couldn't walk away. You saved Isabella Rodriguez because you made one phone call when everyone else had given up. That's who you are, Pierce. The question is whether you're ready to stop apologizing for it." Rowan thought about Oceanside Memorial, about Stephanie's betrayal and Winters' threats and 43 job rejections, about sleeping in her car if she couldn't make rent, about playing by rules written by people who'd never had to choose between rent and food. Then she thought about Isabella's smile, about Lila's relief, about the mother who'd pressed her hands together in gratitude. "I'm ready," Rowan said. "Good. Because we just got word of a medical emergency in a village 3 hours up the coast. Cholera outbreak. 20 people sick, no clean water, no medical supplies." Vance headed toward the bridge. "Get some sleep. We leave at dawn." Rowan went to her tiny cabin, lay in her bunk, felt the ship beginning to move beneath her. Her phone buzzed one last time, text from an unknown number. "You're making a mistake. Come back to Harlow Bay. This isn't over." She stared at the message, ice forming in her stomach, because she recognized the area code, Harlow Bay. And the message had come through even though she was in international waters, which meant someone with serious resources was tracking her, someone who wanted her back, someone who wasn't done with her yet. Rowan deleted the message, but couldn't delete the feeling it left behind, like being watched through a window she hadn't known was open. The Mercy Grace cut through dark water toward the cholera outbreak, engines thrumming low and steady. Rowan stood on deck, the phone heavy in her hand, trying to piece together who would have the resources to track her location in international waters, and the motivation to want her back in Harlow Bay. The answer came with uncomfortable clarity. Someone who'd lost something when she exposed the truth about Lila Montgomery. Someone with enough to hide that her absence made them nervous. She thought about Stephanie's face when Rowan had shown her the nails. Not shock, but fear. About Security Chief Winters' threats that felt too personal, too urgent. About Dr. Ashford dismissing Lila's pain with the kind of certainty that came from practice. They'd all acted like people protecting something bigger than their reputations. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Marcus appeared beside her with 2 cups of coffee, his default remedy for everything. "Want to talk about it?" "Someone from Harlow Bay is tracking me." Marcus didn't look surprised. "You poked a hornet's nest. Hornets don't forget." "I'm in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. How would they even—" "Your phone's GPS, email metadata, credit card transactions if you've used one." He sipped his coffee. "If they have resources, they can find you. Question is, what do they want?" "To scare me into staying quiet." "About what?" "You already exposed the guy who hurt that girl. He's in custody." That was the piece that didn't fit. Captain Douglas Harmon was behind bars. Wade Hartley had confessed. The case was closed. So why would anyone at Oceanside Memorial still be threatened by Rowan, unless there was more to find? The village came into view as dawn broke, a cluster of buildings clinging to the coastline like barnacles, connected by dirt paths in desperation. The Mercy Grace anchored offshore, and they ferried in by launch. Rowan, Dr. Vance, Elena, and James, carrying medical supplies in waterproof cases. The local contact met them at a makeshift dock, a priest named Father Miguel, weathered and exhausted, who'd been treating patients with prayer and boiled water because that's all he had. 23 sick now, he said in English, tinged with Spanish inflection. 4 dead since yesterday, mostly children and elderly. Cholera killed through dehydration. The treatment was simple: oral rehydration salts, IV fluids for severe cases, antibiotics to shorten duration. But simple didn't mean easy when you had limited supplies and patients scattered across a village with no running water. They set up a clinic in the church, the only building large enough. Rowan moved through the rows of sick people lying on mats, assessing, triaging, starting IVs in dehydrated veins that kept collapsing. A grandmother who couldn't stop vomiting. A toddler with sunken eyes who whimpered but no longer cried because crying required moisture his body didn't have. A teenage boy whose pulse was thready and weak, his blood pressure bottoming out. "We need more saline," Rowan called out. "That's the last bag," Elena said, holding it up. "We have 20 patients who need IV fluids. Then we choose who gets them." The words hung in the air like an accusation. This was the calculus of disaster medicine, deciding who got resources and who got comfort care. At Oceanside Memorial, every patient got what they needed. Here, every patient got what was left. Rowan looked at the teenage boy, then at the toddler, then at the grandmother. 3 people, 1 bag of saline. "Give it to the boy," Dr. Vance said quietly. "He's young enough to survive with aggressive support. The toddler needs oral rehydration first. The grandmother..." She didn't finish the sentence. Rowan started the IV, watching clear fluid drip into collapsing veins, knowing that somewhere in this church, a grandmother was dying because they couldn't save everyone. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Another message. "How's the hero work going? Saving the world one patient at a time while people back home ask questions about you?" Rowan's hand stilled on the IV line. "What is it?" Vance asked. "Someone's harassing me. Same number, same threats." "Block them." "I did. They're using different numbers." Rowan pulled out her phone, showed Vance the messages, 5 now, from 5 different numbers, all with Harlow Bay area codes. Vance read them, her expression darkening. "Someone's coordinating this. This isn't random. What do they want?" "To rattle you, to make you feel unsafe even here." Vance handed back the phone. "Don't respond, don't engage, and when we get back to the ship, we're calling this in." "To who? I'm not even in the country." "To people who owe me favors." They worked for 16 hours straight. Rowan's hands moved on autopilot. Check vitals, administer medication, monitor response, move to the next patient. The church filled with the sounds of suffering and the smells of illness. Father Miguel prayed over the dying in Spanish while Rowan fought to keep them alive with medicine. By evening, they'd lost 2 more patients, but 18 were stable, rehydrating, their eyes clearing, their bodies remembering how to hold water. Rowan sat on the church steps as the sun set, too exhausted to move. Elena joined her, offering a protein bar that tasted like cardboard and gratitude. "You did good work today," Elena said. "We lost people. We saved more than we lost. That's the best anyone can do." Rowan's phone buzzed again. She pulled it out, ready to delete another threat. But this message was different. Not a threat, a photo. Her apartment in Harlow Bay, taken from inside. Showing her desk, her laptop, her personal belongings. Someone had been in her home. The protein bar fell from her hand. "What?" Elena grabbed the phone, looked at the photo, swore in Spanish. "Vance, you need to see this." Dr. Vance took the phone, studied the image, her jaw tightening. "When was this taken?" "Today, apparently." "The metadata says 3 p.m. Eastern." Rowan's voice was shaking. "Someone broke into my apartment while I was here. Or they had a key." Vance pulled out her own phone, dialed a number. "Yeah, it's me. I need a welfare check on an address in Harlow Bay. Possible break-in." She rattled off Rowan's address from memory, which meant she'd done more research on Rowan than she'd admitted. "Also need phone records for harassment. Multiple numbers, coordinated campaign. Yes, I know what I'm asking. Just do it. She hung up. Who is that? Rowan asked. Rowan Sakon, someone who can get answers faster than the police. Vance sat down beside her. You're not safe in Harlow Bay. When your rotation ends, you're not going back there. That's my home. That's a crime scene. Whoever's doing this has resources, enough to track you internationally, enough to access your apartment, enough to harass you from multiple numbers. Vance's expression was grim. This isn't about scaring you anymore. This is about making you disappear. Why? The case is closed. Harmon's in custody. What else is there? That's what we need to find out. They returned to the Mercy Grace after midnight, bone-tired and rattled. Rowan went to her cabin, locked the door, sat on her bunk staring at her phone. 7 more messages had arrived while they were offline. You should have stayed invisible. Nobody will miss you out there. Accidents happen at sea. Think about Lila. Think about what happened to her. Could happen to anyone. You're not a hero. You're a loose end. Come home. Make this easy. Last warning. The final message included another photo, this one of Lila Montgomery, taken recently, walking across a college campus. The implication was clear. They could reach her too. Rowan's hands were shaking as she forwarded everything to Vance. The response came within seconds. Don't sleep alone tonight. Come to the med bay. Rowan found Vance there with Marcus and James, all 3 of them looking at a laptop screen showing data Rowan didn't understand. Phone records, financial transactions, network maps with names and connections. Sit down, Vance said. We need to talk about what you actually uncovered at Oceanside Memorial. I told you, nails in a pillow. Captain Harmon wanted revenge on Admiral Montgomery. That's what NCIS concluded. But NCIS doesn't know what I know. Vance turned the laptop around. I made some calls, talked to people who owe me favors in military intelligence. Turns out Captain Harmon wasn't the only person with a grudge against Montgomery. He was just the patsy. What do you mean? Harmon had the motive and the access. He confessed. But the money that paid Wade Hartley didn't come from Harmon's accounts. It came from a shell company registered in the Cayman Islands. That shell company is owned by a trust. That trust is controlled by a holding company, and that holding company has 3 board members. Vance highlighted names on the screen. Dr. Richard Ashford, Walter Grantham, CEO of Oceanside Memorial, and Security Chief Dale Winters. The room tilted. They framed Harmon? Rowan whispered. They used him. He had motive, so when Wade confessed and named him, everyone stopped looking. NCIS closed the case. Montgomery pulled his funding. The hospital took a hit but survived, and the real conspirators stayed hidden. Why would they torture Lila Montgomery? That's the question. James leaned forward. Montgomery's foundation funds $60 million a year to that hospital, but it also comes with oversight, quarterly audits, financial reviews, performance metrics. If Montgomery pulled funding because his daughter was mistreated, the hospital loses money, but the board members keep their jobs. But if Montgomery pulled funding because of financial irregularities he discovered during an audit, they'd go to prison, Marcus finished. Embezzlement from a military-funded medical facility is federal crime. Rowan's mind raced. You think they tortured Lila to force Montgomery to pull his funding before he could audit them? We think they were desperate, Vance said. They'd been skimming money for years, inflated supply costs, fake contractor payments, equipment that was billed but never delivered. Montgomery's annual audit was scheduled for November. They needed him gone before then. So they made his daughter scream until he couldn't stand to have her there anymore. And when I found the nails, when I proved Lila wasn't crazy, you became a threat because you're the only person who actually looked at that pillow, who documented everything, who could testify that the nails were placed with surgical precision. Vance pulled up another image, a close-up of one of the nails showing scoring marks. These weren't random. They were positioned using medical knowledge. Someone with surgical training did this. Dr. Ashford, head of neurology, access to Lila's room, her schedule, her medication regimen, enough medical knowledge to cause maximum pain without leaving evidence. Why haven't you gone to the police? Rowan asked. Because we need proof. Right now, all we have is financial records that point to shell companies and a theory about motive. NCIS already closed the case. Admiral Montgomery has moved on, and you're the only witness who can connect the medical precision of those nails to someone with surgical training. So they want me dead. They want you silenced. Dead would work. Discredited would work too. Anything that keeps you from testifying if this ever goes to trial. Vance closed the laptop. The harassment, the break-in, the threats, they're testing to see if you'll break. If you'll come back to Harlow Bay where they have control. I'm not going back. Good. Because tomorrow I'm getting you to a safe house in Virginia. One of my contacts has a place. Secure, off the grid, impossible to find. You stay there while we build a case that NCIS can't ignore. For how long? However long it takes. Rowan looked at the three of them, Dr. Vance with her military connections and moral certainty, Marcus with his quiet competence, James with his steady hands. They were strangers who'd become allies because she'd done the right thing and paid the price. What about the patients here? Rowan asked. The cholera outbreak isn't over. Elena can handle it. You've taught her the protocols. Vance's expression softened slightly. I know you want to stay, but you're no good to anyone dead. Rowan's phone buzzed. Everyone tensed. She looked at the screen. Email this time, from an address she didn't recognize. Email protected. Subject, I know what you found. The message was short. Ms. Pierce, you don't know me, but I know what you discovered at Oceanside Memorial. I worked in medical records. I saw the audit discrepancies. I saw what Ashford and Grantham were doing. I was too afraid to speak up, but I kept copies. If you're willing to testify, I'm willing to give you evidence that will bury them. Meet me in Harlow Bay. I'll explain everything. You have to come back. It's the only way. Sarah Klein. It's a trap, Marcus said immediately. Obviously, Vance agreed. They're using a fake witness to lure you back. But something about the message felt different from the threats. The threats had been blunt, aggressive, designed to intimidate. This was subtle, offering exactly what Rowan would want. Validation, evidence, another victim willing to speak up. What if it's real? Rowan asked. Then Sarah Klein should contact NCIS directly. She doesn't need you. Unless she's scared. Unless she thinks they won't believe her without corroboration. Rowan pulled up the email header, looked at the metadata. This was sent from inside Oceanside Memorial's network, from a medical records computer. Vance took the phone, examined it. That doesn't mean it's legitimate. It means someone with access to that computer sent it. Or it means there's actually a medical records clerk who saw something and is finally ready to talk. You want to risk your life on maybe? Rowan thought about Lila Montgomery screaming in pain while doctors called her crazy. About Isabella Rodriguez dying slowly because no hospital would take a charity case. About the grandmother in the village who died because they didn't have enough saline. She thought about being invisible, being quiet, being careful. And she realized she was done with careful. I want to risk my life on the possibility that someone else is ready to stand up, Rowan said. Because that's what someone did for me. Admiral Montgomery believed me when nobody else would. I owe it to Sarah Klein, if she's real, to do the same. This is insane, James said. This is who she is, Vance replied, looking at Rowan with something that might have been respect or resignation. She can't help herself. If I'm going back to Harlow Bay, I'm going prepared, Rowan said. I document everything. I meet Sarah Klein in a public place. I record the conversation, and I have backup. You'll have more than backup. Vance pulled out her phone. You'll have the kind of support that makes people think twice about making you disappear. She made 3 calls in rapid succession, each one short, each one ending with, I need a favor. When she finished, she looked at Rowan. You leave tomorrow. But you don't go alone and you don't go quietly. We're making this so public that anything that happens to you becomes national news. How? Vance smiled, sharp and cold, by reminding Oceanside Memorial exactly who they're dealing with. The plan came together overnight. Dr. Vance had connections that spanned 3 decades of military medicine and humanitarian work. She'd pulled people out of war zones, negotiated with warlords, testified before Congress about international medical ethics. When she called in favors, people listened. The first call went to a journalist at the Washington Post who'd done a series on military hospital oversight. Vance gave her the outline: embezzlement, torture, cover-up, and a nurse who'd exposed it at the cost of her career. The second call went to Admiral Montgomery directly. Rowan listened to that one on speaker. "Admiral, it's Sarah Vance. We served together on the Mercy Hospital ship in 2009. Dr. Vance, patient. It's been a long time. What can I do for you?" "The nurse who saved your daughter is being threatened. The people behind the pillow incident weren't just Captain Harmon. There's evidence of a larger conspiracy involving Oceanside Memorial's administration. They've been harassing her, tracking her, trying to silence her." Silence on the other end. Then, "Where is she now?" "Safe. But she needs to return to Harlow Bay to meet a potential witness. I'm asking you to provide security." NCIS closed the investigation. NCIS doesn't know what we know, and your daughter deserves to know that everyone who hurt her faces consequences, not just the convenient scapegoat. Another pause. "What do you need?" "Eyes on her, protection detail, and enough visibility that anyone thinking about making her disappear knows it'll create problems." "Done. Tell Miss Pierce she's got full Naval Criminal Investigative Service escort, and tell her Lila wants to thank her in person." The third call went to a lawyer specializing in whistleblower protection. Within 2 hours, Rowan had legal representation, a protective order being filed, and documentation of every threat she'd received. By morning, the Washington Post had published a story. "Nurse who exposed hospital torture now faces retaliation." It went viral within hours. Rowan read it on her phone during the boat ride back to Costa Rica, watching her life become a headline. Rowan Pierce, 34, discovered evidence of deliberate patient abuse at a prestigious military-funded hospital. Instead of receiving commendation, she was fired and blacklisted. Now, sources say she's being harassed and threatened by individuals connected to the hospital's administration. The case raises troubling questions about institutional protection of whistleblowers and the lengths some will go to silence uncomfortable truths. The comments section exploded. Thousands of people sharing their own stories of medical mistreatment, of being dismissed, of institutional betrayal. Rowan's name was trending on social media. News outlets were picking up the story. Politicians were calling for investigations. She'd wanted to be invisible. Now she was impossible to ignore. The flight back to the United States was surreal. Rowan sat in first class, courtesy of Admiral Montgomery, watching clouds pass beneath the wings and wondering if she was flying toward justice or disaster. Marcus sat beside her. Vance had insisted he accompany her as medical support and witness. "You know this could go badly," he said. "I know. Sarah Klein could be fake, could be a trap, could get you killed." "I know that too. So why are we doing this?" Rowan looked at him. "Because if she's real and I don't show up, she'll think nobody cares. She'll stay quiet. And Ashford and Grantham will keep hurting people. And if she's not real, then I walk into a trap with NCIS agents, cameras, and half the internet watching. They can't disappear me now. I'm too visible." Marcus nodded slowly. "Visibility is armor. Smart." "Visibility is weapon," Rowan corrected. "They wanted me invisible, so I'm doing the opposite." They landed at Reagan National at 4 p.m. 2 NCIS agents met them at the gate, a man and woman in dark suits who introduced themselves as Agent Torres and Agent Kim. "Miss Pierce," Torres said, "we're your escort to Harlow Bay. We'll be with you the entire time." "Thank you." "Don't thank us yet. We're also investigating whether you're fabricating this entire story for attention." Rowan stared at him. "Excuse me? You've gone from unemployed nobody to national headline in 72 hours. Some people think that's convenient timing." His expression was neutral, professional, skeptical. "We're here to protect you and to determine if protection is necessary. Someone broke into my apartment. We checked. No signs of forced entry. Nothing stolen. Could be you staged it. The messages, from burner phones, could be self-sent, could be an ex-boyfriend, could be legitimate." Torres gestured toward the exit. "Let's go to Harlow Bay and find out." The drive took 3 hours. Rowan sat in the back of a black SUV, watching the landscape change from urban sprawl to coastal towns, feeling the weight of doubt pressing down on her chest. Agent Kim turned around from the front seat. "For what it's worth, I believe you. Torres is playing devil's advocate, But the fact that someone got into your apartment without forced entry means they either had a key or they're very good at what they do. Either way, you're in danger. Thank you. Don't thank me, just don't do anything stupid when we get there. They arrived in Harlow Bay as the sun set, the city lights reflecting off the harbor like scattered diamonds. Rowan's apartment building looked exactly the same, shabby, industrial, anonymous. The agents cleared the apartment first. No intruders. No obvious signs of disturbance beyond what the photo had shown, but someone had been there. Rowan could feel it, the sense of violation, of privacy breached, of safety stolen. We'll post an agent outside your door tonight, Torres said. Tomorrow you meet this Sarah Klein person. We'll be watching from a distance. Anything feels wrong, you signal us. What's the signal? Take off your jacket. We'll move in immediately. Rowan nodded, too exhausted to argue, too wired to sleep. Marcus took the couch. The agents posted outside. Rowan lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if Sarah Klein was real or if she was walking into an ambush designed to look like an accident. Her phone buzzed at 11 p.m. Email from Email Protected. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. Harlow Bay Public Library, 3rd floor reading room. Come alone or I won't show. I'm risking everything to meet you. Please don't let me down. Sarah, Rowan forwarded it to Agent Torres. His response came back. We'll be there. She won't see us. You'll wear a wire. And if this goes sideways, you hit the floor and let us handle it. She tried to sleep but couldn't. At 2 a.m., she gave up, went to the kitchen, made coffee. Marcus was awake too, scrolling through his phone. The story's everywhere, he said, showing her. CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, everyone's covering it. You're the nurse who stood up to institutional corruption. They're calling you a hero. I'm just someone who looked at a pillow. You're someone who refused to look away. That's rarer than you think. At 1:45 p.m. the next day, Rowan walked into Harlow Bay Public Library wearing a wire so small she could barely feel it taped between her shoulder blades. Agent Torres and Agent Kim were somewhere in the building, dressed as civilians, watching. Marcus was in a coffee shop across the street with binoculars and a phone on speed dial to 911. And Rowan was climbing the stairs to the 3rd floor reading room, her heart hammering so hard she wondered if the wire was picking it up. The reading room was nearly empty, just an elderly man dozing over a newspaper and a young woman sitting at a corner table, her back to the room, her hands wrapped around a coffee cup. Rowan approached slowly. The woman turned. She was maybe 25 with dark circles under her eyes and the kind of exhaustion that came from fear. She wore medical scrubs under a jacket, Oceanside Memorial colors. Sarah Klein? Rowan asked quietly. The woman nodded. Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would. I almost didn't. Rowan sat down across from her. You said you have evidence? Sarah pulled a flash drive from her pocket, set it on the table. 5 years of financial records, supply chain discrepancies, invoices for equipment that was never delivered, contractor payments that went to shell companies. I've been documenting everything because I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know who to tell. Why not go to NCIS directly? Because I'm terrified. Sarah's voice cracked. Dr. Ashford is my cousin. He got me this job. If I testify against him, my family will disown me. But if I don't, she swallowed hard. I can't sleep knowing what they did to that girl, what they've been doing to other patients. Other patients? Sarah nodded. Lila Montgomery wasn't the first. Over the last 3 years, there have been 6 other cases. Young women, all daughters of wealthy or powerful men, all admitted to the maritime wing for evaluation, all developing mysterious symptoms that got worse during their stay. The hospital would blame mental illness, the families would pull them out, and Montgomery Foundation audits would get delayed or canceled because the families were too distressed to participate. Rowan's blood went cold. It was systematic. It was a pattern. I didn't see it until you found those nails. Then I went back through the records and realized they've been doing this for years, creating medical crises to manipulate audit schedules and keep the embezzlement hidden. Why are you telling me this now? Because you're the only person who fought back, the only one who didn't look away. Sarah pushed the flash drive across the table. Everything's on here. Dates, amounts, patient names, contractor invoices. It's enough to reopen the investigation and bring down everyone involved. Rowan reached for the flash drive. Sarah's hand shot out, gripping Rowan's wrist. Promise me you'll use it. Promise me this wasn't for nothing. I promise. Sarah released her, stood abruptly. I have to go. They can't know I was here. She walked away quickly, disappearing down the stairs. Rowan sat there, the flash drive in her hand, feeling the weight of 5 years of corruption condensed into something smaller than her thumb. Agent Torres appeared from behind a bookshelf. We got everything on tape. The wire worked perfectly. Sarah Klein is real. Sarah Klein just gave us probable cause to reopen the investigation. Torres took the flash drive, sealed it in an evidence bag. We'll need you to give a full statement. Everything you know, everything you witnessed, everything that happened at Oceanside Memorial. How long will that take? Hours, maybe days. This is big, Ms. Pierce, bigger than we thought. They were halfway down the library stairs when Rowan's phone buzzed. Text from unknown number. You just made a fatal mistake. She showed it to Torres. He immediately radioed Kim. Possible threat. Lock down the library. Nobody in or out. But the library was already emptying. Afternoon patrons heading home, students leaving after study sessions. Too many people moving in too many directions. And somewhere in that crowd, someone who'd just watched Rowan receive evidence was planning their next move. Torres pushed Rowan toward the emergency exit. We're getting you out of here, now! They burst onto a side street, Kim ahead of them, Marcus running from the coffee shop. A car engine roared to life. Black sedan, tinted windows, accelerating straight toward them. Torres shoved Rowan behind a parked car as the sedan swerved, jumped the curb, and Agent Kim drew her weapon, screaming, Federal agent, stop! The sedan didn't stop. It crashed through a newspaper stand, scattering papers like startled birds, and disappeared around the corner with Torres calling for backup, and Rowan crouched behind a car realizing that visibility wasn't armor after all. It was a target painted on her back in colors everyone could see. The safe house was a colonial-era townhome in Alexandria, Virginia, tucked between a bookstore and a Korean restaurant, the kind of place you'd walk past 1,000 times without noticing. Agent Torres had driven them there directly from Harlow Bay, running 2 red lights and taking an exit ramp the wrong way to lose the tail that had appeared 20 minutes outside the city. Rowan sat in the back seat, Marcus beside her, both of them silent as Torres made call after call, coordinating with NCIS headquarters, the FBI, and someone he kept referring to only as the deputy director. We're escalating this to a federal task force, Torres said, as they pulled into an underground garage. The flash drive Sarah Klein gave you contains evidence of wire fraud, embezzlement from a military-funded institution, and conspiracy to commit assault. That's federal jurisdiction across the board. What about the car that tried to hit us? Rowan asked. Stolen plates. Abandoned 3 blocks from the library, wiped clean, professional work. Torres killed the engine. Whoever's behind this has resources and reach. The safe house is need to know only. No phone calls, no internet, no contact with the outside world until we have people in custody. The safe house interior looked like a grandmother's home. Floral wallpaper, overstuffed furniture, framed photographs of people who'd never existed. But the windows had bulletproof glass, the doors had reinforced frames, and the basement had been converted into a tactical operations center with computer terminals and surveillance monitors. Agent Kim was already there, setting up communication equipment. Forensics is going through the flash drive now. Initial analysis shows over 400 fraudulent transactions spanning 5 years. Total estimated theft is somewhere north of $8 million. Rowan sank into a chair, the number incomprehensible. 8 million? Inflated supply costs, phantom contractors, equipment that was ordered but never delivered. They'd bill the Montgomery Foundation, pocket the difference, and use legitimate hospital operations to cover the paper trail. Kim pulled up a spreadsheet on one of the monitors. Look at this. A single order for surgical equipment, billed at $200,000. Actual cost based on manufacturer records, $60,000. The difference went into shell accounts controlled by the board members. How did nobody catch this during audits? Because the people conducting the audits were the same people stealing the money. Dr. Ashford chaired the Medical Oversight Committee. Walter Grantham controlled financial reporting. Security Chief Winters managed access to records. Kim highlighted names on an organizational chart. They had every checkpoint locked down. Except the Montgomery Foundation's independent audit, Torres added, that was scheduled annually, used outside accountants, and had full access to all records. If that audit went forward, the whole scheme would collapse. So they tortured his daughter to make him pull funding before the audit could happen, Rowan said quietly. And when you exposed it, when you proved Lila wasn't crazy, you threatened to unravel everything they'd built. Torres pulled up another screen showing a timeline. Look at the dates. Lila was admitted October 1st. The foundation audit was scheduled for November 15th. She started screaming October 7th. You found the nails October 28th. Admiral Montgomery pulled all funding October 29th. The audit was canceled November 1st. They almost made it, Marcus said. They did make it. NCIS arrested Captain Harmon, case closed, hospital took a financial hit, but the board members kept their positions and their freedom. Torres turned to Rowan. Until you wouldn't stay quiet, until you kept digging, until you became a national story that forced us to look deeper. Rowan's phone, confiscated when they entered the safe house, buzzed on the table. Agent Kim picked it up, read the notification, her expression shifting. The Washington Post just published a follow-up, she said. They got access to preliminary financial analysis from the flash drive. The headline is, Hospital Torture Scandal Reveals Millions in Theft. She turned the phone around. Rowan saw her own photo, the one from her nursing license, years out of date, next to images of Oceanside Memorial, Admiral Montgomery, and a redacted hospital invoice showing the price discrepancies. The story was everywhere again, trending on every platform. News anchors were calling it the biggest medical fraud case in a decade. And somewhere in Harlow Bay, 3 people who'd thought they were untouchable were watching their world collapse in real time. They're going to run, Rowan said. Let them try. Torres pulled out his phone. I've got arrest warrants being drafted for Ashford, Grantham, and Winters. FBI's coordinating with local police to execute simultaneously. They'll be in custody by morning. What about Sarah Klein? Witness protection. She's already been relocated. Kim pulled up a secure message. She gave a full statement corroborating everything on the flash drive. Named names, provided dates, identified other patients who were targeted. The 6 women she mentioned, are they safe? We're reaching out to their families now. Some might not even know they were deliberately made sick. Kim's voice was tight with anger. This isn't just fraud. This is systematic assault disguised as medical care. Rowan thought about Lila screaming in the darkness, about doctors dismissing her pain, about the casual cruelty of people who'd sworn oaths to heal. She thought about Isabella Rodriguez dying slowly until one phone call changed everything. She thought about this grandmother in the village who died because resources ran out. The world was full of people who looked away because looking was dangerous. But it was also full of people who refused to be invisible. I want to testify, Rowan said. When this goes to trial, I want to be there. You'll have to be, Torres replied. You're the primary witness, the one who found the physical evidence and connected it to institutional conspiracy. They'll come after me. They already are, but now you've got federal protection and a case that's too public to bury. Torres stood. Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be intense. But Rowan couldn't rest. She lay in the safe house bedroom, twin bed, blackout curtains, a window that looked onto a brick wall, and stared at the ceiling thinking about everything that had led here. She'd been invisible for 6 years. Part-time nurse. Divorced. Bankrupt. The kind of person who slipped through institutional cracks because institutions were designed to let people like her disappear. And then she'd made one decision, to believe a girl who was screaming. Everything else had followed from that single choice. Her phone buzzed. Agent Kim had returned it with all outgoing communication disabled. Incoming only, monitored by NCIS. Email from Admiral Montgomery. Ms. Pierce, Lila asked me to forward this to you. She wanted you to know. VM. Attached was a message from Lila herself. Dear Rowan, I don't know if you'll ever read this, but I need to write it anyway. You saved my life. Not just by finding the nails, but by believing me when everyone else thought I was broken. I start therapy next week. Real therapy, not the kind where they assume I'm crazy. My dad and I are learning to talk to each other again. I'm going back to school in January. None of that would have happened if you hadn't stayed in my room that night, if you hadn't looked at that pillow, if you hadn't refused to walk away. I heard what they're doing to you now, the threats, the harassment, the danger. I'm so sorry. You shouldn't have to pay this price for helping me. But I want you to know, you didn't just save one person. You saved everyone they would have hurt next. You stopped them. Thank you. I'll never forget you. Lila Montgomery. Rowan read it 3 times, tears running down her face. She'd lost her job, her home, her safety, but she'd given a girl back her sanity and her future. The math wasn't equal, but it was enough. At 6:47 a.m., the arrests began. Rowan watched them on live television in the Safe House Operations Center. News helicopters circled Oceanside Memorial as FBI agents in tactical gear entered the building. Cameras caught Dr. Richard Ashford being led out in handcuffs, his face pale, his expensive suit rumpled. Walter Grantham surrendered at his home in the suburbs, his lawyer already beside him, both of them silent as photographers shouted questions. Security Chief Dale Winters tried to run. His arrest happened in a hospital parking garage, captured on security footage that was leaked to media within an hour. He'd been loading boxes into a car trunk, presumably evidence he was trying to destroy, when FBI agents surrounded him. He'd pulled a weapon. Bad decision. 3 agents had tackled him simultaneously, and he'd gone down hard, screaming about his rights while they cuffed him. That's going to play well in court, Agent Kim said dryly, watching the footage. Fleeing arrest while destroying evidence and pulling a gun on federal agents. How long until trial? Marcus asked. Months? Maybe a year. Federal cases move slowly. Torres was reading updates on his tablet. But we've got enough for indictment. The flash drive alone is devastating. Combined with Sarah Klein's testimony and Rowan's documentation of the nails, they're finished, Kim said with satisfaction. But Rowan felt no satisfaction. Just exhaustion and a strange hollow feeling, like she'd been holding her breath for weeks and finally exhaled. What happens to the hospital? She asked. Montgomery Foundation is filing a civil suit to recover stolen funds. The board of directors is being dissolved. NCIS is auditing every military-funded medical facility in the region. Torres looked up. Oceanside Memorial will survive, but under new management and heavy oversight. The patients deserve better. What happens to me? You go back to your life, with protection until we're certain there's no residual threat. Torres hesitated. And with a substantial whistleblower reward. The False Claims Act allows recovery of stolen federal funds, and whistleblowers get a percentage. You're looking at somewhere between 15 and 30% of $8 million. The number hit like a physical blow. That's over $1 million, Rowan whispered. Closer to $2 million, probably. You exposed massive fraud. The law compensates that. Torres's expression was neutral. You earned it. Rowan thought about her apartment with $800 rent, about eating ramen to save money, about unemployment checks that barely covered utilities, about choosing between medication and food. $2 million was freedom, was security, was the ability to never be vulnerable again. But it was also blood money. Payment for having her life destroyed, for being threatened, for watching people she'd trusted reveal themselves as monsters. I don't want it, she said. Everyone stared at her. I want it donated to organizations that support medical whistleblowers, people who lose everything for telling the truth. Rowan's voice was steady. I want it used to protect the next person who finds nails in a pillow. That's a lot of money to give away, Marcus said carefully. It's a lot of money I didn't have yesterday. I'll be fine without it. Torres nodded slowly. That's your choice. But think about it before you make it final. Financial security isn't something to dismiss lightly. I'm not dismissing it. I'm choosing something more important. Which is? Making sure nobody else has to be invisible to survive. The federal task force worked fast. Within 48 hours, they'd traced the shell company payments back to specific accounts, identified the contractors who'd participated in the fraud, and built a timeline of the conspiracy that stretched back 7 years. Within a week, 3 more arrests had been made, the hospital's chief financial officer, a supply chain manager, and Wade Hartley's brother, who'd acted as a courier for cash payments. Captain Douglas Harmon, still in military prison for the initial assault charge, was offered a deal. Full testimony about how he'd been manipulated into taking the fall in exchange for a reduced sentence. He took it immediately, providing details about meetings with Dr. Ashford and payments he'd received that he'd thought were legitimate consulting fees. The conspiracy was unraveling thread by thread, and every thread led back to the same three people. On the 9th day, Rowan received a visitor at the safe house. Admiral Victor Montgomery arrived in dress uniform, flanked by 2 NCIS agents carrying a folder under his arm. Agent Torres cleared the visit personally, then left them alone in the living room. Montgomery sat across from her, his expression unreadable. "Miss Pierce, thank you for seeing me." "Of course." "I came to apologize." He set the folder on the coffee table between them. "When my daughter was screaming, I believed the doctors. I trusted the institution. I thought," his voice caught, "I thought if I just paid enough money, hired the best specialists, built the best facilities, she'd be safe. I was wrong." "You couldn't have known." "I should have. I'm her father. And I was so consumed with fixing everything that I forgot to simply listen." Montgomery opened the folder, pulled out a photograph. Young woman, maybe 19, lying in a hospital bed, wires connected to monitors, eyes closed. "This is Jessica Brennan, daughter of Senator Brennan. She was admitted to Oceanside Memorial 14 months ago for anxiety and insomnia. Developed severe abdominal pain that doctors couldn't explain, diagnosed with conversion disorder. She died 3 weeks later from a perforated ulcer that went untreated because everyone assumed her pain was psychological." Rowan felt ice forming in her stomach. "They killed her?" she whispered. "They neglected her, dismissed her, made her feel crazy until her body failed." Montgomery pulled out another photo. "This is Amanda Torres, daughter of a Marine Corps general, admitted for headaches, developed seizures, diagnosed with psychosomatic disorder. Turns out she had a brain tumor that wasn't caught until it was inoperable." "How many?" Rowan asked. 6 that we know of. Young women, powerful families, all dismissed as mentally ill. Some survived, some didn't." Montgomery's hands were shaking slightly. The pattern was there. Nobody looked because nobody wanted to see that a prestigious hospital was systematically abusing patients to manipulate audit schedules. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because you need to understand the magnitude of what you stopped. Lila was patient number 7. You found the evidence before they could do to her what they did to the others." Montgomery met her eyes. "You didn't just save my daughter. You saved every girl who would have come after her." Rowan couldn't speak. The weight of it was crushing. 6 young women failed by the same system that had tried to fail Lila. 6 families who'd trusted doctors and been betrayed. 6 lives destroyed or ended because healing had become secondary to profit. "I'm setting up a foundation," Montgomery continued. "Medical advocacy for young patients whose symptoms are dismissed. Free legal representation, independent medical reviews, financial support for families fighting institutions." He pulled out papers from the folder. "I want you to run it." "Me?" "You have the clinical knowledge, the moral courage, and the lived experience of being dismissed. You know what it's like to be invisible. You know how to fight back." Montgomery slid the papers across the table. "Full salary, benefits, autonomy to build the program however you see fit. Your only job is to make sure no other family goes through what mine did." Rowan looked at the papers. They were incorporation documents for the Lila Montgomery Foundation for Patient Advocacy. Her name was listed as Director of Medical Affairs. "I'm not qualified for this," she said. "You're the only person qualified. You stood up when it cost you everything. That's the only qualification that matters." "I don't know how to run a foundation." "You'll learn. I'll provide support, legal, financial, administrative. But the vision has to be yours." Montgomery stood. "Think about it. But don't think too long. There are patients out there right now being dismissed, being told their pain is psychological, being failed by systems that should protect them." He left the folder on the table and walked out. Rowan sat there for a long time, staring at the incorporation papers. She'd lost her job at Oceanside Memorial, but she'd gained something bigger, purpose that transcended paychecks and safety. She picked up her phone, disabled for outgoing calls except to approved numbers. Agent Torres had added Admiral Montgomery to the list. She dialed. He answered on the first ring. Ms. Pierce? I'll do it, but on one condition. Name it. Sarah Klein gets the job of her choice in the foundation. She risked everything too. She deserves recognition. Done. Anything else? Yes. We hire Marcus and Dr. Vance as medical consultants. They taught me what it means to practice medicine without institutional corruption. I'll have contracts drawn up. Montgomery's voice carried something that might have been relief. Welcome to the fight, Director Pierce. The line went dead. Rowan sat in the safe house living room, holding a phone that had just changed her life again, wondering if she'd ever stop being surprised by the paths that opened when you refused to look away. The trial was scheduled for 8 months later. In that time, the Lila Montgomery Foundation for Patient Advocacy opened offices in Washington, D.C., hired a staff of 12, and took on 43 cases of young patients whose medical concerns had been dismissed. Sarah Klein became the Director of Medical Records and Compliance. Marcus joined as a field medical consultant. Dr. Vance signed on as senior advisor, bringing her network of international healthcare professionals into the Foundation's orbit. Rowan worked 18-hour days building systems, protocols, and partnerships with hospitals willing to reform their patient advocacy programs. She testified before Congress about medical dismissal and institutional corruption. She gave interviews to national media about the importance of believing patients. She was no longer invisible, and she'd stopped trying to be. The trial itself lasted 6 weeks. Federal prosecutors presented the flash drive evidence, financial records, testimony from Sarah Klein, statements from the 6 young women who'd been targeted before Lila, and Rowan's meticulous documentation of the nails found in the pillow. Defense lawyers tried to argue that the embezzlement was a separate issue from the assault, that Captain Harmon had acted alone in hurting Lila, that any financial irregularities were accounting errors, not criminal fraud. The jury didn't buy it. Rowan testified on day 12. She walked into the federal courtroom wearing a dark suit provided by the Foundation, her hands steady, her voice clear. She described finding the nails, photographing them, preserving evidence while everyone around her tried to silence her. She described the medical precision of the placement, the surgical knowledge required, the deliberate intention to cause pain without leaving visible injury. Dr. Ashford's lawyer tried to discredit her. Ms. Pierce, isn't it true you were fired from your previous position for making false accusations? I was forced out for reporting a doctor who was falsifying records. That doctor was subsequently fired and lost his medical license. And isn't it true you filed for bankruptcy? Yes. Because standing up for patients cost me my career and my marriage. I'd make the same choice again. You're currently employed by a foundation created by Admiral Montgomery, the father of the alleged victim. Don't you have a financial interest in maintaining this narrative? My financial interest is in making sure no other patient is tortured for profit. If that makes me biased, I'm comfortable with that bias. The courtroom stirred. The judge called for order. On day 38, the jury returned verdicts. Dr. Richard Ashford, guilty on all counts. Wire fraud, conspiracy to commit assault, obstruction of justice. Sentence, 23 years federal prison. Walter Grantham, guilty on all counts. Embezzlement, wire fraud, conspiracy. Sentence, 18 years federal prison. Security Chief Dale Winters, guilty on all counts, with additional charges for fleeing arrest and assault on federal officers. Sentence, 26 years federal prison. The sentences were handed down in a courtroom packed with media, advocates, and the families of the 6 young women who'd been victims before Lila. Rowan sat in the gallery beside Admiral Montgomery and Lila, who'd flown in from college to watch justice delivered. When the judge's gavel fell, Lila took Rowan's hand and squeezed. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." Outside the courthouse, reporters mobbed them. "Ms. Pierce, how does it feel to see them convicted? Do you think this will change how hospitals treat patients? What's next for the foundation?" Rowan stood on the courthouse steps, microphones thrust toward her, cameras recording, and felt the surreal distance between the person she'd been, invisible, dismissed, careful, and the person she'd become. "This verdict sends a message," she said, her voice carrying across the crowd. "Patients deserve to be believed. Whistleblowers deserve protection, and institutions that prioritize profit over healing will be held accountable. The Lila Montgomery Foundation will continue fighting for every patient who's been told their pain is imaginary. Because pain is real, suffering is real, and silence is no longer an option. The cameras flashed like starbursts. That night, Rowan returned to her new apartment, a two-bedroom in Alexandria, walking distance from the foundation offices, affordable on her director's salary. It wasn't fancy, but it was hers, and it was safe, and nobody had broken into it. She made tea, sat on her small balcony overlooking the city, and checked her email. One message stood out. Email protected. Ms. Pierce, I heard about the verdict. I'm 8 months post-surgery now. The doctors at Walter Reed say my heart is perfect. I'm back in school, playing soccer, living the life I thought I'd never have. My mom and I wanted to say thank you for making one phone call, for caring about a girl you'd never met. You gave me my future back. I hope you know how many lives you've changed. Not just mine. All of us. Isabella Rodriguez. Rowan read it twice, then saved it in a folder she'd titled Reasons. Reasons to keep fighting. Reasons to stay visible. Reasons to believe that one person refusing to look away could shift the weight of the world just enough to let light in. Her phone buzzed. Text from Admiral Montgomery. The foundation just received a $50 million donation from an anonymous benefactor. Apparently our work is being noticed. Well done, Director. VM. $50 million. Enough to expand operations nationwide. Enough to hire staff in every major city. Enough to ensure that no patient would ever be dismissed, disbelieved, or destroyed by institutions that had forgotten their purpose. Rowan stood on her balcony, looking out at Alexandria's lights, thinking about Lila Montgomery, sleeping peacefully in a college dorm without fear. About Isabella Rodriguez running across a soccer field with a perfect heart. About Sarah Klein building a new life free from the family that had tried to silence her. She thought about the 6 women who hadn't survived, whose names she carried like prayers. Jessica Brennan, Amanda Torres, and 4 others whose families had trusted and been betrayed. She thought about herself, the invisible nurse who'd become impossible to ignore by simply refusing to walk past a screaming girl. And she realized something that felt like truth. Visibility wasn't weakness. Silence wasn't safety. And the people who tried to make you disappear were only powerful until someone turned on the lights. Her phone rang one more time. Dr. Vance. Pierce. Got a situation in Chicago. 17-year-old girl, admitted for evaluation, developing symptoms that don't match any diagnosis. Doctors are pushing for psychiatric commitment. Families asking for help. Rowan grabbed her laptop, already pulling up flight schedules. Send me the details. I'm on the next plane. Knew you would be. That's why I called you first. The line went dead. Rowan packed a bag, left her tea cooling on the balcony, and headed for the airport. Somewhere in Chicago, a girl was screaming. And unlike 3 years ago, when Lila Montgomery had screamed in the darkness and nobody listened, this time someone would hear. This time, someone would look. This time, the quiet nurse who'd learned to make noise was coming. And she wasn't coming alone. The flight to Chicago was 90 minutes of turbulence and preparation. Rowan sat in economy. The foundation had money now, but she still couldn't justify business class when patients needed resources. Reading the case file Dr. Vance had emailed. Maya Castellanos, 17 years old, honors student, varsity volleyball player, admitted to Northlake Medical Center 2 weeks ago after her parents noticed behavioral changes, mood swings, insomnia, paranoia. The admitting psychiatrist diagnosed acute anxiety disorder and recommended inpatient treatment. But once admitted, Maya's condition had deteriorated rapidly, hallucinations, violent outbursts, seizures that didn't respond to medication. The hospital was pushing for long-term psychiatric commitment. The family was pushing back, insisting something physical was wrong. And the attending physician, Dr. Leonard Brass, chief of psychiatry, was threatening to involve Child Protective Services if the parents didn't consent to treatment. Rowan had seen this pattern before. Young woman, powerful institution, dismissal disguised as diagnosis. Her phone buzzed as the plane descended. Text from Sarah Klein. Background check on Northlake Medical is clean. No obvious financial irregularities. Dr. Brass has 20 years good reputation. This might actually be psychiatric. Rowan texted back. Or it might be what everyone wants us to think. I'm not assuming anything until I see her. The Castellanos family met her at the hospital. Mother, father, and Maya's older brother. all of them exhausted and desperate. Mrs. Castellanos grabbed Rowan's hands the moment she introduced herself. "Thank you for coming. Nobody else would listen. They all say we're in denial, that Maya needs psychiatric help. But I know my daughter. This isn't mental illness. Something's wrong and they won't look for it." "I'm here to look," Rowan said. "Can I see her?" Maya's room was in the psychiatric wing. Locked doors, reinforced windows, cameras monitoring every corner. The girl lay in bed, restrained at the wrists and ankles, her eyes rolling back, her body occasionally jerking with seizures that came and went like weather. Rowan approached slowly, introducing herself even though Maya couldn't respond. She checked the chart. Antipsychotics, mood stabilizers, sedatives. Enough medication to tranquilize a horse, yet the seizures continued. "When did the seizures start?" Rowan asked the nurse on duty. 3 days after admission. Dr. Brass says they're psychogenic, non-epileptic events caused by psychological distress. "Has anyone done an EEG to confirm that?" Dr. Brass didn't think it was necessary. The pattern doesn't match typical epilepsy. Rowan felt the familiar cold anger settling into her chest. A 17-year-old girl was having seizures and nobody had done basic neurological testing because the attending physician had already decided what was wrong. She pulled out her phone, called Dr. Vance. "I need you to consult on a case. 17-year-old with seizures being treated as psychiatric. I think we're missing something neurological. I'm in Seattle, can't get there until tomorrow. Then I need someone local, someone who won't defer to Dr. Brass." "Give me an hour." Rowan stayed with Maya, watching the seizures, timing them, noting patterns. They came every 20 to 30 minutes, lasted 40 to 60 seconds, always started with the girl's right hand twitching before spreading to her entire body. Focal onset seizures, starting in one specific part of the brain before generalizing, not psychogenic, neurological. Dr. Brass arrived an hour later, a man in his 60s with silver hair and the kind of confidence that came from never being questioned. He looked at Rowan with open annoyance. "Who are you?" "Rowan Pierce, Director of Medical Affairs for the Lila Montgomery Foundation. The family requested an independent evaluation. This patient is under my care. I don't need a nurse second-guessing my diagnosis." "I'm not second-guessing. I'm requesting standard neurological workup for a patient presenting with seizures." "These are psychogenic events, not neurological. I've seen hundreds of cases like this." "Then an EEG will confirm your diagnosis. If it's psychogenic, the EEG will be normal during seizures. If it's neurological, we'll see abnormal brain activity." Rowan kept her voice level. "Either way, we get clarity. I don't appreciate outsiders interfering with my patients. And I don't appreciate doctors refusing basic testing because they've already made up their minds." The room went silent. Dr. Brass's face reddened. "I could have you removed from this hospital." "You could try. But the family has requested foundation involvement, which gives us legal standing to observe care. And if you refuse diagnostic testing, I'll document that refusal and submit it to the medical board." Rowan pulled out her phone, opened the voice recorder. "For the record, Dr. Brass, are you refusing to order an EEG for a patient experiencing recurrent seizures?" Brass stared at her, calculating. Then he turned to the nurse. "Schedule an EEG for tomorrow morning." "Thank you," Rowan said. He walked out without another word. The nurse looked at Rowan with something between fear and respect. "You just made an enemy." "I've made worse." Dr. Vance's local contact arrived that evening, a neurologist named Dr. Patricia Okonkwo, who'd worked with Vance during a medical mission in Nigeria and owed her several favors. She reviewed Maya's chart, watched 2 seizures, and immediately ordered additional tests beyond the EEG. "I want a full metabolic panel toxicology screen and brain MRI," Dr. Okonkwo said. "These seizures have a focal onset, which suggests a structural or metabolic cause. If this were purely psychiatric, we'd see different presentation." "Dr. Brass insists it's psychogenic," the nurse said carefully. "Dr. Brass hasn't practiced neurology in 30 years. I have." "Run the tests." The EEG came back the next morning showing clear abnormal electrical activity during seizures. Not psychogenic. Neurological. Dr. Brass tried to explain it away. Stress-induced neurological changes, conversion disorder manifesting as brain activity. But Dr. Okonkwo shut him down with the kind of clinical precision that left no room for argument. This is epilepsy. Focal onset with secondary generalization. The question is what's causing it? The MRI provided the answer. Small mass in the right temporal lobe. Benign tumor pressing against brain tissue, causing the seizures, the behavioral changes, the hallucinations. Completely treatable with surgery. But only if someone had bothered to look. Dr. Okonkwo showed the images to the Castellanos family in a conference room while Rowan stood beside them. Your daughter has a brain tumor. It's benign, not cancerous, but it's in a location that's causing neurological symptoms. We can remove it surgically. Full recovery expected. Mrs. Castellanos collapsed into a chair, sobbing with relief. We knew something was wrong. We knew it wasn't mental illness. You were right to advocate for her, Dr. Okonkwo said gently. And Miss Pierce was right to push for testing. Dr. Brass appeared in the doorway, his expression carved from stone. I'd like to speak with Ms. Pierce privately. They stepped into the hallway. Brass closed the door behind them. You just humiliated me in front of a patient's family. I just saved a girl's life by insisting on basic neurological testing. You don't understand how this works. I've been practicing medicine for 40 years. I don't need some activist nurse telling me how to do my job. Then maybe you should have done your job. Rowan's voice was flat. A 17-year-old girl had a brain tumor and you decided she was crazy. You were going to commit her to psychiatric care indefinitely. You were going to destroy her future because testing was inconvenient. I made a clinical judgment. You made an assumption. And when the family questioned it, you threatened them with CPS instead of listening. Rowan stepped closer. How many other patients have you dismissed? How many other families have you bullied into silence? Brass's face went pale. Are you threatening me? I'm documenting this case and submitting it to the Illinois Department of Public Health. They'll decide if it warrants investigation. Rowan pulled out her phone, showed him the Foundation's official complaint form, already filled out. The Lila Montgomery Foundation exists to protect patients like Maya, and doctors like you are exactly why we're necessary. She walked away, leaving him standing in the hallway. Maya's surgery was scheduled for 3 days later. The Foundation covered all costs, brought in a specialist from Johns Hopkins, and ensured the family had support throughout the process. Rowan stayed in Chicago, working from a hotel room, coordinating with Sarah Klein on other cases while waiting for Maya's surgery to conclude. The call came at 2:47 p.m. Dr. Okonkwo, her voice warm. Surgery was successful. Tumor removed completely. No complications. She's going to make a full recovery. Rowan sat on the hotel bed, phone pressed to her ear, crying with relief. Another girl saved. Another family spared the nightmare of dismissal and institutional betrayal. But when she checked her email, she found something that made her blood run cold. Message from an anonymous account. You're making powerful people angry. Chicago, Harlow Bay. How many hospitals do you plan to embarrass? How many doctors will you destroy before someone stops you? Be careful, Director Pierce. Accidents happen to people who don't know when to quit. She forwarded it immediately to Admiral Montgomery and Dr. Vance. Montgomery's response came within minutes. This is the third threat this month. We're escalating security protocols. NCIS is investigating. Do not engage. But Rowan was tired of being threatened, tired of people trying to scare her into silence. She typed a response to the anonymous email. I don't quit, I don't scare, and every threat you send just proves we're doing something right. Come after me if you want. But know this, I'm not invisible anymore. And the people I've saved are watching. Good luck making me disappear when half the country knows my name. She hit send before she could second-guess herself. Then she booked a flight back to Washington, D.C. and prepared for whatever came next. The Illinois Department of Public Health launched an investigation into Dr. Brass within a week. The review found a pattern of psychiatric diagnoses made without proper neurological consultation, families pressured into accepting treatment plans, and at least 4 other cases where young patients had been committed long-term for conditions that were later found to be medical rather than psychiatric. Dr. Brass was suspended pending full review. Northlake Medical Center issued a public apology. And Maya Castellanos gave an interview from her hospital bed, her head wrapped in bandages, her voice clear and strong. If Ms. Pierce hadn't come, I'd be in a psychiatric facility right now, locked away, medicated, told I was crazy. Instead, I'm recovering from surgery and going back to school next month. She believed me when nobody else would. She saved my life. The interview went viral. Again, Rowan's name was everywhere. Again, the Foundation's mission was amplified across national media. And again, someone tried to silence her. The attack came on a Tuesday evening in November. Rowan was walking from the Foundation offices to her apartment, a 20-minute route she took every day. The streets were crowded with commuters, the November air cold and sharp. She didn't see the car until it jumped the curb. Black sedan, tinted windows, same make and model as the one that had tried to hit her in Harlow Bay. Rowan dove sideways, crashing into a storefront window as the car roared past, missing her by inches. Glass shattered. People screamed. The sedan accelerated away, disappearing into traffic before anyone could get a license plate. Rowan lay on the sidewalk, bleeding from cuts on her hands and face, her heart hammering, her ears ringing. Someone helped her up. Someone else called 911. Within minutes, sirens were converging from every direction. Agent Torres arrived before the ambulance, his face grim. Same car, same pattern. This wasn't random. I know. You need to go back into protective custody. No. Rowan, they just tried to kill you in the middle of D.C., on a crowded street. They're escalating. And if I hide, they win. If I disappear, every patient who's counting on the Foundation loses hope. Rowan stood, refusing the EMT who tried to make her sit down. I'm not hiding anymore. Then we're assigning you a full security detail, armed protection 24/7, no arguments. Fine, but I'm not stopping. Torres looked at her like she was insane. Maybe she was, but she'd learned something in the 3 years since she'd found nails in Lila Montgomery's pillow. The people who wanted you silent were only powerful until you refused to be quiet. And Rowan was done being quiet. The investigation into the car attack moved fast. NCIS and FBI worked together, pulling traffic camera footage, analyzing the vehicle's route, tracking it to a rental company in Virginia. The car had been rented using a fake ID and paid for with cash, but the rental agency had security footage showing the renter, a man in his 40s, medium build, baseball cap pulled low. Facial recognition came back with a match. Trevor Grantham, son of Walter Grantham, the former Oceanside Memorial CEO, currently serving 18 years in federal prison. They arrested Trevor at his home in Richmond at 4 a.m. He tried to run, made it 3 blocks before FBI tackled him. During the search of his home, they found detailed surveillance photos of Rowan, walking to work, entering her apartment, meeting with Foundation staff. They found handwritten notes planning the attack. November 12th, evening commute, crowded street, make it look like accident. They found communications with 2 other people, Stephanie Chen, the nurse who'd tried to stop Rowan from reporting the nails, and Dr. Marcus Chen, the doctor Rowan had reported at Mercy General years before, Stephanie's husband. The conspiracy was bigger than anyone had realized. The original Oceanside Memorial fraud had tentacles reaching back years, connecting to people Rowan had crossed in her entire career. Stephanie and Marcus Chen were arrested the same day. Both confessed under questioning. They'd been part of a larger network of medical professionals who'd been profiting from fraudulent billing, falsified records, and systematic patient abuse. When Rowan had reported Marcus at Mercy General, she'd threatened to expose the entire network. When she'd found the nails at Oceanside Memorial, she'd become an existential threat. So they'd tried to destroy her, blacklist her, threaten her, kill her. But they'd underestimated one fundamental truth. Rowan Pierce had spent her entire life being underestimated, and she'd learned to turn invisibility into power. The trials happened over the next 6 months. Trevor Grantham, convicted of attempted murder, conspiracy, stalking. Sentence, 32 years federal prison. Stephanie Chen, convicted of conspiracy, obstruction of justice, accessory to attempted murder. Sentence, 15 years federal prison. Dr. Marcus Chen, convicted of medical fraud, falsifying records, conspiracy. Lost his medical license permanently. Sentence, 12 years federal prison. Each conviction made national news. Each sentence sent a message. The people who tried to silence whistleblowers would face consequences. And through it all, Rowan kept working. The Lila Montgomery Foundation expanded to 15 cities. They took on over 200 cases in the first year alone. Young patients who'd been dismissed, disbelieved, diagnosed as mentally ill when they were physically sick. Rowan traveled constantly, testifying, consulting, training hospital staff on how to actually listen to patients. She became a national voice for medical advocacy, appearing on news programs, speaking at conferences, writing articles about institutional reform. She was offered book deals, speaking fees, opportunities that would have made her wealthy beyond imagination. She turned them all down. Instead, she funneled every dollar back into the foundation, into helping patients who couldn't afford advocates, into protecting whistleblowers who risked everything to expose corruption. On the 3-year anniversary of finding the nails in Lila's pillow, Rowan received an invitation. Walter Reed Medical Center. Special ceremony. Admiral Montgomery requesting her presence. She flew to Washington, D.C., wondering what this was about. The ceremony was held in a hospital auditorium packed with people, patients, families, medical professionals, politicians, journalists. Rowan sat in the front row beside Dr. Vance, Marcus, Sarah Klein, and Agent Torres, all of them dressed formally, all of them looking confused. Admiral Montgomery took the stage in full dress uniform. 3 years ago, he began, my daughter was tortured in a hospital that was supposed to heal her. She screamed for help and nobody listened, except one nurse, a part-time, invisible, dismissed nurse who refused to look away. He gestured to Rowan. She felt hundreds of eyes turning toward her. Rowan Pierce didn't just save my daughter. She exposed a conspiracy that had been hurting patients for years. She testified despite threats. She continued fighting despite attempts on her life. She built an organization that has helped hundreds of patients and changed how hospitals across this country approach patient advocacy. Montgomery pulled out a metal case. The Surgeon General of the United States, in coordination with the Department of Defense, has created a new civilian honor, the Patient Advocacy Medal of Valor. It recognizes individuals who demonstrate extraordinary courage in protecting patients from institutional harm. He opened the case. Inside was a medal, bronze, with a medical caduceus on one side and a raised hand on the other. Miss Pierce, would you please come to the stage? Rowan stood on shaking legs, walked to the stage, stood before the Admiral. He pinned the medal to her jacket. You taught us that healing requires listening, that advocacy requires courage, that sometimes the quietest people make the loudest difference. His voice was thick with emotion. Thank you for saving my daughter. Thank you for saving all of them. The auditorium exploded with applause. Rowan stood there, tears streaming down her face, overwhelmed by the journey from invisible to impossible to ignore. After the ceremony, she found Lila waiting outside. The young woman looked healthy, vibrant, alive. She pulled Rowan into a fierce hug. I graduated college, Lila said, with honors. I'm starting medical school next year. I want to be like you, someone who listens when everyone else looks away. You're already better than me, Rowan said. You survived. You're thriving. That's the best revenge. It's not revenge. It's proof that you were right. Lila pulled back, her eyes bright. Proof that one person refusing to be silent can change everything. They stood there, two women connected by trauma and triumph. Proof that the system could be fought, and sometimes, if you refuse to quit, the system could be changed. Isabella Rodriguez was there too, now 15 years old, tall and healthy, her mother beside her. The girl ran to Rowan, hugged her, spoke in rapid Spanish that her mother translated. She says she plays soccer now, 3 times a week. Her heart is perfect. She wants to be a doctor too. She wants to help people like you helped her. Maya Castellanos approached next, recovered from surgery, back at school, her parents crying as they thanked Rowan for the 100th time. One by one, the patients the foundation had helped appeared. 20, 30, 50 of them. Young women who'd been dismissed, diagnosed as crazy, told their pain was imaginary. All of them healthy now. All of them believed. All of them standing as living proof that listening mattered. Dr. Vance found Rowan in the crowd. You did good, Pierce. We did good. All of us. No, this was you. I gave you a job on a ship. You turned it into a movement. Vance smiled. I'm proud to know you. Marcus appeared with champagne. Sarah Klein brought cake. Agent Torres showed up with his family, introducing his daughter, a nursing student who told Rowan she'd been inspired by her story to pursue medical advocacy. The celebration lasted into the evening. Rowan moved through it in a daze, accepting congratulations, hugging patients, feeling the weight of what they'd built together. At midnight, she stood on the Walter Reed Medical Center terrace, looking out at Washington, D.C.'s lights, the metal heavy on her chest. Admiral Montgomery joined her. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for believing me, for supporting the foundation, for everything." "I should be thanking you. You gave me my daughter back." He paused. "What's next for you?" "More of this. More patients, more advocacy. We're opening offices in 10 new cities next year, expanding internationally the year after." Rowan smiled. "Turns out there are a lot of people who need someone to believe them. And you're going to believe all of them?" "Every single one. Until nobody has to scream to be heard." Montgomery nodded slowly. "The world needs more people like you. The world has plenty of people like me. They're just invisible, dismissed, told to stay quiet." Rowan touched the metal. "My job is to make sure they know they don't have to be." She stayed on the terrace long after Montgomery left, watching the city lights, thinking about the journey from that night 3 years ago when a girl had screamed and everyone had walked away. Everyone except her. Her phone buzzed, email from an address she didn't recognize. She almost deleted it. Too many threats, too much harassment. But something made her open it. "Dear Miss Pierce, you don't know me, but you saved my sister. She was admitted to a hospital in Phoenix, diagnosed with anxiety, but you helped us get a second opinion. Turns out she had Lyme disease. She's recovering now. I just wanted to say thank you. And to let you know that there are 1,000 people like me out here. People whose lives you've changed without ever meeting them. You made it okay to demand answers. You made it okay to fight back. You made it okay to believe that patients matter. Thank you for being loud when everyone wanted you to be quiet." Jennifer Martinez. Rowan read it 3 times, saving it in her reasons folder alongside Isabella's message and dozens of others. Then she looked out at the city and made a promise to herself. She would never be invisible again. She would never stay quiet when someone was screaming. She would never walk away because walking away was easier. She would listen. She would fight. She would believe. And she would teach others to do the same until the system that had tried to break her became a system that protected everyone. 3 years ago, she'd been nobody. Part-time nurse, divorced, bankrupt, invisible. Now she wore a medal from the Surgeon General and ran a foundation that changed lives. But the medal wasn't the victory. The foundation wasn't the victory. The victory was every patient who didn't have to scream to be believed. The victory was every family that got answers instead of dismissal. The victory was every doctor who learned to listen instead of assume. The victory was proving that one person refusing to look away could shift the weight of the world just enough to let light in. Rowan Pierce had been invisible. Now she was impossible to ignore. And every person she'd helped, every life she'd changed, every patient she'd believed was proof that sometimes the quietest voices, when they finally speak, are the ones that change everything. She walked back inside to the celebration, to the patients and families and colleagues who'd become her purpose. She was home, and she was just getting started.